welcome to Tales in the Dark. I know many of you enjoy relaxing with these videos, so I recommend turning down the volume until my voice is barely audible. It'll make the experience even more soothing. Before you close your eyes, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and enjoy listening. Story 1. I opened the fridge like I always did, half asleep, craving something cold. But tonight there was a single wet footprint on the middle shelf. Human, bare. The air smelled wrong, like mildew and salt water. I hadn't spilled anything. I hadn't left the door open, and the footprint wasn't mine. At first I shut the door, reopened it. The footprint remained, glistening under the harsh interior light. I touched it with my fingertip, cold and damp, real. My apartment felt suddenly vast and unknown behind me, shadows stretching where I couldn't see. I photographed the footprint with my phone, then wiped it away with paper towels that came back soaked with what looked like normal water. But it smelled like the ocean, briny and organic. I checked the entire refrigerator for damage, leaks, or signs of intrusion. Everything else appeared normal. Milk carton, vegetable drawer, leftover pasta from dinner. Sleep came reluctantly that night. I left the bedroom door open, listening to the refrigerator's familiar hum, now sinister, now secretive. Morning brought rational thoughts, condensation, a spill I'd forgotten. My imagination turning ordinary things sinister in the quiet darkness of night. I even laughed at myself while making coffee. Then I saw the second footprint on my kitchen floor, wet, fresh, leading away from the refrigerator. I followed it down the hallway where it faded into nothing mid-stride. I placed my foot beside it for comparison. The mysterious print was narrower, longer, with toes that seemed oddly spaced. Not mine, not anyone's I knew. I began documenting everything, taking photos, keeping notes, recording ambient sounds in my apartment when I left for work. The recordings captured nothing but the refrigerator cycling on and off, occasional creaks from the building. But the footprints continued appearing, always starting from inside the refrigerator, always vanishing after a few steps. One night I left a trail of flour across the kitchen floor. In the morning, barefoot prints crossed through it, not disrupting the flour, but somehow leaving dark, wet impressions beneath it. I touched one and my finger came away with that same cold, ocean-scented moisture. People at work noticed my distraction, the dark crescents beneath my eyes. "You look terrible," my supervisor said, concern in her voice. I couldn't explain that I now spent nights sitting in my kitchen, watching my refrigerator, afraid to open it, but more afraid not to know. I started researching water damage in buildings, mold that causes hallucinations, shared psychosis, nothing fit. I posted anonymously on forums about paranormal experiences and received frantic messages from strangers claiming to know what was happening, offering protection spells and exorcism contacts. I deleted the post. The night I heard humming from inside the refrigerator was when everything changed. Not mechanical humming, but singing. A melody I almost recognized but couldn't place. I pressed my ear against the door and the humming stopped, replaced by what sounded like gentle breathing. I flung open the door. Nothing but food and cold air greeted me. But when I closed it, a wet handprint appeared on the outer surface of the door, fingers dragging downward. I stopped eating from my refrigerator, lived on takeout and non-perishable foods. Still, I couldn't move out. Some compulsion kept me there, needing to understand. I began talking to the refrigerator, asking questions into its silent face. Nothing answered, but sometimes when I spoke, the light bulb inside would flicker almost imperceptibly. The strangest development came when I found my missing watch inside the vegetable crisper. I hadn't worn it in months, had assumed it was lost during a move. Now it sat between the carrots and lettuce, ticking normally, cold to the touch. I set up a camera positioned to record the refrigerator all night. The footage showed nothing unusual until exactly midnight, when the image distorted with static for precisely 72 seconds. When the picture cleared, a new footprint glistened on the floor, though the refrigerator door had never opened. That night I woke to the sensation of cold, wet fingers brushing my forehead. I lay paralyzed as something dripped onto my pillow beside my ear water that smelled of deep, dark places. The weight of someone sitting on the edge of my bed made the mattress dip, though I saw nothing in the darkness. "Who are you?" I whispered. The room filled with the sound of waves crashing, wind, salt in the air. My bedsheets grew damp with what felt like sea spray. In the morning, seaweed was tangled in my hair. I called in sick to work and sat with my back against the refrigerator all day, feeling it vibrate against my spine. Something had changed. The footprints no longer appeared only at night. I watched one form beside me in broad daylight, water seeping up through the floorboards, arranging itself into the now familiar shape. When I placed my hand over it, my skin chilled instantly, fingertips going numb. And beneath my palm, I felt the impression deepen, as if someone were stepping harder, pressing up against me from somewhere beneath the floor. I began sleeping in the kitchen, makeshift bed arranged to face the refrigerator. I left notes taped to the door. "What do you want? Who are you? Why me?" Each morning, the paper would be damp, ink blurred, but no answers came. Then one evening, I found a child's drawing magnet pinned to the refrigerator door, a crude picture of a house underwater, stick figures floating inside. I own no magnets, no drawing supplies. The paper was dry, but smelled of that same mildew ocean scent, edges ragged as if long submerged. I took it down with trembling hands. On the back, written in blue crayon, "We found you." That night, the footprints multiplied, dozens appearing simultaneously across my kitchen floor, ceiling, walls, different sizes, different patterns, moving in all directions. The smell of salt water became overwhelming. The refrigerator door swung open on its own, and cold mist poured out, not dissipating but pooling on the floor, rising slowly around my ankles. I tried to run, but the mist solidified around my feet like ice. Water began streaming from every appliance, faucets, dishwasher, even the electrical outlets, not gushing but flowing with deliberate purpose, converging in the center of my kitchen, rising, taking shape. The figure that formed was translucent, shimmering, only approximately human. Where its face should have been, there was only rippling darkness. It extended what might have been a hand toward me. "What do you want?" I screamed. The water figure tilted its featureless head. When it spoke, its voice was the sound of waves crashing against distant rocks, of whirlpools pulling everything down, of pressure crushing deep-sea vessels. "Home," it said, "we want to go home." The refrigerator began to transform. The door widened, the interior deepening into impossible darkness. Cold wind rushed from it, carrying the scent of an ocean I'd never known, ancient and vast. I glimpsed shapes moving within that darkness, heard voices calling in a language made of currents and tides. The figure took my hand. Its touch was like plunging into winter waves. "You opened the way," it said. "Now you must help us return." "I don't understand," I whispered, but part of me did understand. The footprints, the searching, the gradual widening of whatever crack had formed between my world and theirs. "Your home was once our home," the figure explained. before the dry times, before you built walls against the water. My kitchen was transforming around us, walls dissolving into liquid darkness. Through that darkness, I glimpsed enormous structures, a city of impossible architecture beneath the waves. "We need a guide," the figure said, "someone who can walk between, someone who found us." I looked back at my apartment, now distant across an expanse of churning black water, then at the watery hands still gripping mine. "Will I come back?" I asked. The figure's head rippled. "Parts of you always will." I took a step toward the refrigerator door, now a portal pulsing with deep-sea light. The figure moved with me, our footprints merging on what had once been my kitchen floor. Cold water rose around us as we approached the threshold. Behind us, wet footprints appeared from nowhere, dozens more entities emerging into my world. And ahead, through the doorway that had once simply led to food and ice, an entire civilization waited beneath the waves. I understood then why the footprints had always vanished after a few steps. They hadn't been coming into my world. They'd been trying to lead me out of it. I stepped through now, leaving this recording behind. If you find a wet footprint inside your refrigerator, know that I might be watching from the other side of that door, waiting to guide you home too. Story 2, it rolled in slowly, thick and pale, curling around the fence posts and hedges. But it didn't move past the edge of my yard. The rest of the neighborhood was clear. The air felt heavy, damp, carrying a smell like wet leaves and old stone. I stepped outside just past my porch, and the fog pushed back against me like it didn't want me to leave. I retreated into my house, watching through the window as the milky whiteness grew denser. My neighbors walked their dogs, collected mail, went about their lives under perfectly clear skies, seemingly unaware of the phenomenon contained within the boundaries of my property. At first, I thought it might be some strange microclimate, a quirk of geography. I took photos with my phone and sent them to a friend who studied meteorology. The images came back showing only a normal yard, no fog at all. When I looked at my screen, then back outside, the disconnect made my stomach twist. I began documenting everything. The fog never dissipated, not even when the sun reached its peak. It maintained a consistent boundary, a perfect outline of my property line. When neighbors passed by, their forms became distorted through the haze, elongated and warped, yet they never seemed to notice anything unusual, never looked toward my house with curiosity or concern. On the third day, I noticed the smell had changed. Beneath the earthiness came something metallic, like copper pennies held too long in a warm palm. The moisture in the air left a residue on windows and door frames, a thin film that, when wiped away with my finger, left a faint reddish smear. I called the local environmental agency, but they dismissed my concerns after checking satellite imagery that showed nothing abnormal. The representative suggested stress might be affecting my perception. I nearly believed him until I hung up and watched a bird fly into the fog, only to drop dead the moment it crossed the threshold. I collected the tiny body, careful not to touch the dampness coating its feathers. Under my desk lamp, I examined it, finding no visible injuries, just a stiffness that seemed to have overtaken it instantly. I placed it in a plastic bag and stored it in my freezer, evidence of something no one else acknowledged. The sounds began next, at first just a soft susurration, like whispered conversations heard through a wall. I placed audio recorders at various points around the house. Playing them back, I heard my own breathing, the creak of floorboards under my weight, and something else. Between my footsteps, faint voices speaking words almost familiar, distorted just enough to remain unintelligible. My sleep suffered, dreams filled with figures watching from the fog, never fully visible, retreating when I tried to focus on them. I woke often, certain someone stood at the foot of my bed. The darkness seemed thicker there, gathering into almost shapes that dispersed when I switched on my lamp. I constructed a makeshift protective suit from rain gear, adding multiple layers of plastic bags over my clothes, a painter's mask, swimming goggles, and thick gardening gloves. I needed to test the boundary, to understand what happened at the edge where normalcy met this inexplicable phenomenon. My heart pounded as I stepped outside. The fog swirled around me, seeming to investigate my protective layers, probing for weaknesses. I moved slowly toward the street, marking each step with chalk on the sidewalk. 5 feet from the boundary, the voices grew louder. 4 feet, my skin began to tingle despite the layers. 3 feet, and my ears popped as if the pressure had changed. 2 feet from the edge, the fog thickened substantially, forming a wall I could barely see through. My neighbors' houses wavered beyond it, like viewing the world through warped glass. The pressure against my chest increased, making each breath laborious. 1 foot from freedom, I extended my hand. The gloved fingers breached the barrier, and instantly pain shot up my arm, not burning or freezing, but something wholly foreign, as if my cells were being rewritten from the inside out. I yanked my hand back and stumbled away, retreating to my porch, where I tore off the glove to find my fingertips had turned gray. The skin texture changed to something resembling rough stone. Inside, under bright lights, I examined my altered fingers. The grayness didn't fade or wash away. When I touched them to paper, they left marks like charcoal. Over the next hours, the condition slowly reversed, color returning gradually, but the tactile memory remained embedded in my nervous system, the sensation of becoming something other. I began mapping the fog's effects on objects. Items left outside overnight returned changed metal, corroded in patterns resembling script. Wood developed growth rings that shouldn't exist. Glass became slightly more viscous, as if perpetually melting at an imperceptible rate. My research grew more desperate as weeks passed. I rigged a pulley system to send cameras through the barrier, but the electronics failed at the boundary. Written notes sent on fishing line came back with the ink rearranged into symbols I didn't recognize. A mirror positioned at the edge showed not my reflection, but someone similar yet wrong, my features subtly altered, my movements delayed by milliseconds. Food deliveries stopped arriving, presumably unable to navigate through the fog. My internet connection became intermittent, then failed entirely. The electricity flickered increasingly until only my battery-powered devices remained reliable. I rationed my supplies, aware that eventually I would need to choose between starvation and confronting whatever waited beyond my property. The breaking point came when I found writing on my bathroom mirror, script formed in the condensation that matched the symbols from my altered notes. Not written by any hand, but emerging from within the glass itself. The meaning remained elusive, but the intent became clear: communication. I responded by writing my own messages on windows and mirrors throughout the house. Questions about purpose, origin, intent. The fog seemed to pulse in response, thickening around the house until the outside world disappeared entirely. That night I woke to find the fog inside my house. It seeped through closed windows and beneath doors, filling each room with its pale luminescence. The walls themselves seemed less substantial, vibrating subtly when I pressed my palm against them. The house had become liminal, neither fully here nor there, and I realized I had been asking the wrong questions. This wasn't about what the fog wanted from me, but what it wanted me to become. I stopped fighting it. Sitting cross-legged on my living room floor, I welcomed it in, breathing deeply of its changed scent, no longer earthy or metallic, but something beyond sensory categorization. My skin tingled as it made contact, the sensation not unlike stepping into warm water. The voices clarified then, not speaking any language, but communicating directly through sensation and memory. Images flooded my mind, vast spaces between stars, ancient depths beneath ocean floors, realities folded against one another like pages in a book. I understood that the fog represented a threshold, not an entity, a permeable membrane between what is and what could be. My perception expanded beyond my physical form. I became aware of subtle vibrations connecting all things, the constant exchange of matter and energy that constitutes existence. The fog hadn't singled me out, rather, a convergence of factors had made this particular threshold manifest around my home. I was neither special nor cursed, merely positioned at an intersection. As this understanding solidified, the fog began to thin, not dissipating but becoming part of me, its particles merging with mine until the boundary between us blurred. When my neighbors finally noticed me again, they commented on my extended absence, asked where I had been. Right here, I told them, I never left. They nodded politely, but their eyes slid away from mine too quickly. In reflective surfaces, I catch glimpses of what they see my form slightly out of phase, edges blurring when I move too suddenly. My shadow falls differently now, stretching toward things invisible to others. The fog no longer surrounds my house, yet I carry it within me. Sometimes, walking through my neighborhood, I notice places where reality seems thinner spots, where the air shimmers almost imperceptibly, where sounds echo strangely. I recognize them as thresholds, potentially passable by those who understand their nature. I keep my discovery private, knowing explanation would be futile, but I leave subtle markers near these places, arrangements of stones, patterns drawn in fallen leaves, signals for anyone else who might be paying attention, who might be ready to understand that what we perceive as solid reality is merely one configuration among infinite possibilities. And sometimes, when conditions are right, I can still make the fog appear, calling it forth from within myself. It responds to me now, a tool rather than a mystery. I'm learning its purposes, its limits. I'm learning what it means to exist partially beyond conventional reality. My house remains my anchor to this world, but its doors now open elsewhere too, where they lead changes constantly. I document everything, filling notebooks with observations and theories. The symbols I once found indecipherable now form a language I'm beginning to grasp, not with my mind, but with some new sense that developed during my transformation. I wonder occasionally if others have experienced similar phenomena, if somewhere another person sits alone in a house surrounded by something unexplainable. I wonder if they fight it, as I did, or if they recognize sooner what I eventually learned. Some boundaries exist not to separate us from something dangerous, but to prepare us for something necessary. Story 3, it was small, just a child's sketch in crayon, 4 stick figures holding hands in front of a crooked house. At first I thought it had always been there, maybe left by the previous owners, but the wall had been clean, I would have noticed it. The air near the drawing smelled faintly of wax and dirt, and the 4th time I looked, one of the stick figures had moved closer to the edge of the page. I blinked hard, rubbing my eyes until colored spots danced across my vision. My mind was playing tricks. Drawings don't change. I approached it slowly, running my fingertips over the waxy surface. The paper felt warm, almost feverish against my skin. A strange vibration hummed beneath my touch, so subtle I questioned whether I'd truly felt it. That night sleep eluded me. My bedroom wall faced the one with the drawing, and in the darkness I could sense its presence, a weight pressing against the space between us. The house creaked with unfamiliar sounds, whispers that might have been the wind, might have been something else entirely. My phone, plugged in beside me, emitted a strange static, punctuated by what sounded like distant breathing. Morning brought no relief. The drawing remained, but something was different. The stick figures no longer held hands. They stood apart, and the one at the edge now faced away from the house. I photographed it with my phone, needing evidence, needing to know I wasn't imagining things. "This isn't possible," I whispered to the empty room. My words seemed to hang in the air, absorbed by the walls that suddenly felt too thin. I spent the day researching folklore about enchanted art, urban legends, psychological phenomena that could explain what was happening. Nothing fit. Between searches, I checked the photo I'd taken that morning. The digital image showed the figures exactly as they had been when I first discovered the drawing, all holding hands, all facing the house. I rushed back to the wall. The drawing had changed again. Now the figures were scattered across the page, and the one at the edge, the one facing away, was smudged, its crayon outline bleeding into the white of the paper as if dissolving. The house remained unchanged, but a new element had appeared, a crude circle in the sky, colored solid black. I reached out to touch it, and the paper felt cold this time, unnaturally so, like touching metal left outside in winter. The smell had changed to less wax, more earth, damp and moldering. I pulled my hand back quickly when I noticed the smudge of black on my fingertip, though I hadn't touched that part of the drawing. That evening, I invited a friend over, needing someone else to witness what was happening. But when Ashley arrived, she looked at the wall with confusion. "What drawing?" she asked, her eyes scanning the blank surface. I reached out, feeling the smooth paint of the wall where the paper had been. Nothing, not even a mark to indicate it had ever been there. "I swear it was right here," I insisted, my voice higher than normal. "A child's drawing in crayon." Ashley gave me that look, concern mixed with skepticism, and suggested I might be working too hard. "Stress can do strange things to perception," she said. I nodded, apologized, and walked her to the door, assuring her I'd get some rest. The moment she left, I turned back toward the wall. The drawing had returned, but now it occupied a larger space. The stick figures were smaller in proportion to the house, which had gained details: windows, a door, a chimney with smoke rendered in gray swirls, and the black circle in the sky had grown, dominating the upper portion of the drawing. I took a step back, my heart racing. This couldn't be a hallucination. It was too consistent, too progressive in its changes. I grabbed a marker from my desk and made a small dot on the wall next to the drawing. Evidence, a reference point. That night I set up my laptop to record the wall. I angled the camera perfectly, made sure the battery was full, and started the recording. Then I took a sleeping pill, needing escape from the thoughts swirling in my mind. I woke to the sound of static. My laptop screen displayed nothing but gray noise, despite the recording having run all night. The file was corrupted, but worse than that, the drawing had expanded again. It now covered nearly half the wall, and the black circle had become a gaping void, eating into the sky of the childish scene. The stick figures were now scattered throughout the drawing, one climbing onto the roof, one halfway inside a window, one standing at what appeared to be a newly drawn well in the yard. And the fourth figure, the one that had first moved toward the edge, was gone. My reference dot remained exactly where I'd placed it, now sitting at the edge of a drawing that had somehow grown around it. I called in sick to work, unable to leave the house, unable to take my eyes off the wall for very long. I started documenting everything in a notebook, every change, every sensation, every smell and sound that seemed connected to the drawing. The pages filled quickly with observations that sounded increasingly unhinged, even to me. By evening, the entire wall was the drawing. The house had become more detailed, more real somehow. The black void above it pulsated with a strange rhythm if I stared at it long enough. The remaining stick figures had changed to less stick-like, more defined, with crude facial features and five-fingered hands. One sat at what looked like a table inside the house, visible through a window. One stood in the doorway, half in shadow. One was nowhere to be seen. The smell of earth was overwhelming now, rich and loamy, as if the wall had become a freshly dug garden. When I pressed my palm against it, the surface yielded slightly, warm and damp. I jerked my hand back, leaving a perfect handprint that slowly filled itself in, the crayon marks shifting to cover the disturbance. I should have run, should have grabbed my keys and wallet and fled. Instead, I found myself drawing closer, fascinated by the impossibility of what was happening. I pressed my ear against the wall, listening for what, I wasn't sure. But there it was, a faint, rhythmic sound, not a heartbeat, more mechanical, regular, like footsteps approaching from a great distance. That night I dragged my mattress into the living room, unable to sleep near the wall, but equally unable to leave the house. Something kept me there, a compulsion, a need to see this through to whatever end awaited. In the darkness, I could see a faint glow coming from the room with the drawing, a soft, pulsing light that painted long shadows down the hallway. I must have fallen asleep eventually. I woke to find my notebook open beside me, filled with writing I didn't remember putting there. Page after page of the same phrase, written in what looked like my handwriting, but pressed so hard into the paper that it tore in places. Someone has to live in the house. My hands trembled as I dropped the notebook. I stood up slowly, drawn toward the room with the wall. The doorway seemed narrower than before, the hallway longer. The smell of earth had intensified, mixed now with something else, wood smoke, and beneath that, a faint sweetness like baking bread. The drawing had changed again. The wall was now a window into another place. The crayon lines had gained dimension, depth. The crude house now looked weathered, lived in. Smoke curled from the chimney in lazy, three-dimensional wisps. The black void above had become a night sky, starless and encompassing. And at the door of the house stood a figure, no longer a stick drawing, but a silhouette, dark against the warm light spilling from inside. A figure with my proportions, my outline. It raised a hand in welcome, beckoning. Behind me I heard a sound, a gentle scratching, like crayon on paper. I turned slowly to find the opposite wall of my room now covered in the same childish drawing style. But this drawing showed my living room, rendered in simple lines and primary colors. In it, a crude stick figure stood with its back to a doorway, looking at a wall. I approached this new drawing, my reflection in negative. When I raised my right hand, the stick figure raised its left. When I took a step forward, it moved toward me. We met in the middle, my fingertips pressing against its drawn hand. The surface gave way like tissue paper, tearing around my fingers, pulling at me with gentle insistence. Through the tear, I could see a world rendered in crayon, bright, simple, two-dimensional. Behind me from the other drawing came the sound of a door opening wider, footsteps crossing a wooden floor. I felt a tug from both directions, the crayoned world before me, the too real house behind. Someone had to live in the house. Someone had to complete the drawing. I made my choice, stepping forward through the tear and reality, feeling my body flatten and simplify as the world around me became bright lines on white space. The last thing I saw as I looked back was my room, growing distant as if viewed through the wrong end of a telescope, and within it, a figure that wore my face but wasn't me, closing the door of the room with a satisfied smile. Now I live in a world of crayon and paper. My house is simple four walls, a roof, a door that opens and closes. Sometimes I draw things and they become real as anything can be here. Sometimes I draw people and for a while they keep me company. And sometimes when the loneliness grows too heavy, I draw a small picture on the wall of my crayon house, a window into another world, with people who don't know they're being watched. People who don't realize their walls hold drawings that weren't there yesterday. I wait and I watch and I beckon. Someone always comes through eventually. Someone always has to live in the house. Story 4, I hadn't used it in weeks. I kept it in a storage bin in the attic, but when I came home tonight, it was neatly folded at the foot of my bed, damp, heavy, and smelling of lake water. My sheets were dry. The door was locked. Nothing else had been touched, but I couldn't shake the feeling something had been sleeping there. The blanket had belonged to my grandmother, a heavy wool thing, navy blue with thin white stripes running along the edges. She'd always kept it on her porch swing for cool evenings. After she passed, I couldn't bear to give it away, though I rarely used it myself. Something about its weight had always been comforting, like an embrace from someone who knew exactly how tightly to hold you. I approached it cautiously as if it might suddenly move. The scent grew stronger, murky water, algae, and something else beneath it, something organic and wrong. I reached out, letting my fingers hover just above the fabric. Cold air radiated from it, like opening a freezer door on a summer day. When I finally touched it, water beaded around my fingertips, soaking into my skin. Not dripping wet, but saturated in a way that defied logic, as if it had been submerged moments ago despite its neat folding. I pulled my hand back, wiping it against my jeans. I took photos with my phone. I know how ridiculous that sounds, but I needed proof this was real. The camera captured exactly what I saw: a neatly folded blanket, visibly damp, out of place on my otherwise normal bed. What it couldn't capture was the wrongness of it, the impossible cold, the smell that seemed to grow stronger when I wasn't directly focusing on it. That night I slept on the couch, leaving the bedroom door firmly shut. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Someone had broken in, used my blanket for something, and returned it. The explanation felt paper-thin even as I constructed it. No signs of forced entry, nothing stolen. The attic hatch undisturbed, its pull cord still dangling exactly where it always did, with the fine layer of dust on the surrounding ceiling intact. Morning brought no clarity. The blanket remained, still damp, still smelling of lake water. I picked it up gingerly, carried it outside, and draped it over my porch railing to dry in the sun. My fingers tingled where they had touched it, a sensation like pins and needles, but deeper, down into the bones. I called my friend Nina, who listened patiently before suggesting a carbon monoxide check. I installed a detector that same day. Normal readings. I checked my attic, half expecting to find the storage bin torn open, but it sat untouched, lid sealed with the same packing tape I'd used months ago. Inside was a second navy blanket, identical to the one drying on my porch. My breath caught in my throat. I took photos of this too, the sealed bin, the untouched blanket inside. I brought it downstairs, laid it next to the damp one, now crisp in the afternoon sun. They were mirror images, down to the slight fraying on the bottom corner where my grandmother had once caught it on a nail. I began documenting everything. I bought a notebook with a leather cover that reminded me of something a detective might carry. In it, I recorded every detail about the blankets, the circumstances of finding the first one, the condition of my home. I set up a small camera in my bedroom, aimed at the foot of my bed. The camera captured nothing unusual for 3 nights. On the fourth night, the footage became distorted at exactly 3:17 a.m. according to the timestamp. Static filled the screen for 12 seconds. When the image cleared, the damp blanket was back, folded at the foot of my bed. I watched the footage repeatedly, slowing it down frame by frame. Nothing. No movement, no figure, just static, then the blanket appearing as if it had always been there. That morning I burned both blankets in my backyard fire pit. They smoldered more than burned, releasing a thick gray smoke that made my eyes water and left an acrid taste on my tongue. The smoke seemed to hang low to the ground rather than rising, slithering through the grass like fog before dissipating. That should have been the end of it, a strange occurrence with a decisive resolution. It wasn't. The following night I found wet footprints leading from my bedroom door to the foot of my bed. Small, narrow prints like those of a child, but with too many toes, 7 on each foot by my count. They glistened in the moonlight filtering through my window blinds, then began to evaporate before my eyes, disappearing from the outside in until nothing remained but the memory and the photos I hastily took. In my notebook, I began to sketch what I saw, to record the sensations that accompanied each occurrence. The persistent cold that followed me through my home now. The way electronic devices malfunctioned briefly when I entered a room, screens flickering, speakers emitting soft static. The dreams of dark water closing over my head, of something pale and thin brushing against my ankles just before I woke gasping. I discovered a pattern. The occurrences intensified when it rained. Water spots appeared on my ceiling where no leak existed. My faucets released brownish water for the first few seconds after being turned on, though the municipality reported no issues with the water supply. One morning, my notebook was missing from my bedside table. I found it in the bathroom sink, soaking wet, the pages warped but the ink mysteriously intact. Every page had been filled, though I had only used a fraction of the book. The handwriting was mine, but the words weren't, detailing a drowning from the perspective of both victim and witness simultaneously. I photographed every page before burning the notebook with the same ceremony I had used for the blankets. The smoke formed shapes this time, crude stick figures that danced momentarily before the wind scattered them. Sleep became my enemy. Each morning I woke more exhausted than the night before, my sheets damp with sweat that smelled of lake water. My hair was often wet, as if I'd showered in my sleep, my throat raw, voice hoarse. I installed more cameras in my bathroom, my hallway, trained on my bed. They worked perfectly during the day, but at night they registered nothing but static during crucial moments. I purchased an audio recorder, left it running beside my bed. The playback haunted me, my own voice but speaking words I had no memory of saying. Describing water filling my lungs, the peace that came with surrendering, the cold embrace that follows. In the background, a soft rhythmic sound like water lapping against a dock. And beneath it all, another voice responding to mine, high-pitched, wet-sounding, with consonants that seemed to bubble rather than form clearly. I began to sleep at Nina's apartment. The occurrences followed me there, much to Nina's horror. The first night we woke to find all her houseplants dripping with water, small puddles forming beneath each pot. The second night her bathroom flooded, though no pipes had burst. The third night her cat refused to enter any room I occupied, hissing from doorways with its fur standing on end. I returned home, unwilling to subject her to whatever was happening to me, whatever was following me. That night I didn't fight sleep, I welcomed it. As consciousness faded, I felt my bed shift as if under additional weight. the room filled with the scent of lake water. Cold, damp fingers traced the outline of my face. "I know you're there," I whispered into the darkness. "What do you want?" A child's laugh answered me, distorted as if heard underwater. The weight on my bed shifted, moved closer. I felt something damp press against my back, cold seeping through my pajamas. My breath fogged in front of my face. "You brought me back," the voice bubbled near my ear. "Your blanket, my blanket, the one they wrapped me in." Understanding washed over me. My grandmother's blanket, the lake near her house, the child who had drowned there decades ago, whose body had never been recovered. The blanket my grandmother had used in the search, later keeping it as some kind of memorial. She had never mentioned it, but she had left it to me specifically in her will. "I didn't know," I said to the presence. "Now you do," it responded, its voice clearer now, "and you can't unknow me." Morning came, bringing sunshine that did nothing to warm my home. The foot of my bed was empty, no blanket in sight. But when I looked in the mirror, my eyes had changed color from brown to a deep blue that shifted and moved like troubled water. I still sleep in my bed each night. I still wake to find evidence of my nocturnal visitor wet footprints, the smell of lake water, small objects moved or submerged in cups of water left throughout my home. Sometimes I hear humming, a child's song I almost recognize but can't quite place. I've stopped fighting it, stopped documenting it. The presence isn't malevolent, just lost, attached to the blanket that was its last connection to the world of the living, attached now to me who burned that connection. Sometimes I wake to find my notebooks filled with words I don't remember, writing stories of a life cut short, games never played, a family left behind. I keep these writings now, storing them carefully. When the pages dry, the words remain, a testament to an existence that refuses to be forgotten. At the foot of my bed each night I leave a space, an acknowledgement, an invitation. The weight that settles there is almost comforting now, almost familiar. After all, everyone needs a place to belong, even those who no longer belong anywhere. I only wonder, as my skin grows paler and my own footprints leave damp impressions that linger longer each day, who exactly is haunting whom. Story 5, they started small, barely visible lines where the paint had begun to peel, but over the past few days they spread wider, deeper, and this morning I saw it. The lines had formed a shape, 2 eyes, a nose, a wide, crooked mouth. The air smelled faintly of plaster dust and something sweet, like rotting fruit. I blinked. The expression had changed. I shifted my position on the bed, wondering if perhaps the angle was playing tricks on my vision. The face remained. Where moments ago it had seemed neutral, even vacant, it now wore what I could only describe as a smirk, a knowing look, as if it had been waiting for me to notice. My fingers reached for my phone and I snapped a photo. The screen showed nothing but ordinary ceiling cracks, random, meaningless patterns in old plaster. Yet when I looked up again with my naked eye, the face stared back, its features more defined than before. I stood on my mattress, extending my arm toward the ceiling. The moment my fingertips brushed against the surface, a cold sensation shot through my body. The plaster felt soft, almost moist, despite appearing completely dry. I recoiled, nearly losing my balance. That night, sleep came in fitful waves. Each time I drifted toward consciousness, my eyes would instinctively seek out the ceiling. The face watched me in the darkness, its features shifting subtly with each awakening. By dawn, its eyes had deepened into hollow sockets, and its mouth had widened into what resembled a silent scream. I tried to document the changes. Photos showed nothing unusual. Voice recordings captured only the ambient sounds of my apartment, except for one peculiar section where my recorded voice sounded distant and was accompanied by what might have been breathing, though I had been alone. "Just stress," I muttered to myself while brewing coffee. Lack of sleep playing tricks on my mind. Yet the smell had intensified, that sickly sweet odor now permeating every corner of my bedroom. I searched for the source, checked for mold behind furniture, examined the ventilation, even sniffed along the baseboards. Nothing. When I returned to the bedroom with cleaning supplies, determined to scrub away the cracks, I froze in the doorway. The face had expanded. What had been contained to a small section of ceiling now stretched nearly wall to wall. The eyes tracked my movement as I entered. "This isn't happening," I whispered, my voice sounding foreign even to my own ears. I raised a dampened sponge toward the ceiling, standing precariously on a chair. As the sponge approached the surface, a low vibration traveled through the plaster. I could feel it through the chair, up my legs, settling uncomfortably in my chest. Still, I pressed the sponge against what would be the forehead of the face. The ceiling absorbed the moisture. I watched, transfixed with horror, as the water disappeared into the plaster, leaving no mark. Worse still, the area I had touched darkened as if bruised. That night I slept in the living room. Morning brought a pounding headache and an unshakable feeling of being watched. I avoided my bedroom for hours, busying myself with pointless tasks, but a persistent scratching sound eventually drew me back. Standing in the doorway, I witnessed something impossible. Small particles of plaster were falling from the ceiling not randomly, but in deliberate movements. The mouth of the face was opening and closing. No sound emerged, but the motion was unmistakable. It was speaking. I grabbed a notebook and began documenting everything. The exact patterns of the cracks, the changes in expression, the temperature drops that corresponded with certain movements. If I was losing my grip on reality, I wanted proof. Friends noticed my deterioration. "You look exhausted," they would say during video calls, concern evident in their voices. I made excuses about insomnia, never mentioning the face. How could I? Even to myself, it sounded absurd. One particularly brave night, after several drinks to steady my nerves, I decided to communicate with it. Standing beneath the face, neck craned painfully upward, I spoke. "What do you want?" The ceiling remained still for so long that I nearly laughed at myself. Then, the smallest of movements, a twitch at the corner of the mouth. The sweet smell intensified suddenly, becoming so strong I gagged. In the corner of my eye, I noticed my shadow on the wall. It didn't match my position. While I stood with arms at my sides, the shadow had one arm raised, pointing at the ceiling. I turned quickly, but my shadow snapped back to normal. That night I woke to something cold and wet striking my forehead, plaster dust mixed with moisture. I looked up to find the ceiling weeping actual droplets forming at the eyes of the face and falling onto my bed. The liquid wasn't water. It was too viscous, slightly yellow, and smelled of decay. I changed apartments the next day, left most of my belongings behind, claiming an emergency to my landlord. He seemed unsurprised, almost relieved. My new place felt clean, safe. No cracks marred the pristine white ceiling above my new bed. I slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. Until I noticed, while unpacking, that I had accidentally brought one item from the old bedroom, a mirror that had hung on the wall opposite my bed. The mirror that had, every morning and night, reflected the ceiling directly above me. I approached it cautiously, angling it upward toward my new ceiling. The reflection showed nothing unusual at first. Then, as if ink were spreading through water, cracks began forming in the reflection cracks that didn't exist on my actual ceiling. They started small, 2 eyes, a nose, a wide, crooked mouth. But this time it was smiling. I've sealed the mirror in a storage unit across town. Sometimes I think about destroying it, but something stops me, the certainty that breaking it would only set it free. The cracks haven't appeared on my new ceiling, but sometimes, just before falling asleep, I catch a whiff of something sweet and rotten. And occasionally, in dreams that feel too real, I hear faint scratching inside the walls, as if something is trying to claw its way through something with a wide, crooked mouth that knows my name and has been waiting for me to notice. I know now what I couldn't accept before. It never needed the silencing. It only needed me to see it, to acknowledge it, to give it form through my perception. And now, no matter where I go, it watches, waiting for me to look up again. Story 6. I was digging through old winter coats when I noticed it, a hardshell suitcase, scuffed and locked. I didn't own it. I live alone. The closet smelled like mothballs and something musky, almost animal. I touched the handle. It was warm. Something shifted inside just slightly, like a soft thud against the lining. My fingers recoiled instantly. The apartment stood silent around me, suddenly unfamiliar. I'd lived here for years, yet couldn't remember ever seeing this suitcase before. My breath quickened as I knelt before it, examining the scratched surface. No identifying tags, no airline stickers, just worn dark blue plastic with silver clasps, both secured with a small combination lock. I pulled the suitcase from the closet, setting it on my bedroom floor. It weighed more than expected, substantial, but not heavy enough to contain anything too large. The movement triggered another subtle shift inside, not sliding but more organic, like something adjusting its position. "Hello," I whispered, feeling immediately foolish. What was I expecting? A response? I tried various combinations on the lock, my birthday, common sequences, random numbers. Nothing worked. I placed my ear against the hard shell and listened. The surface felt warmer than before, and there a sound, not quite breathing but rhythmic, almost like a pulse. I took photos of the suitcase, documenting its appearance from multiple angles. When reviewing the images later, I noticed something unsettling. The scratches on the surface appeared slightly different in each shot, as if they'd shifted positions between frames. That night, I pushed the suitcase back into the closet, buried it under winter coats, and tried to forget about it. Sleep came fitfully, dreams filled with muffled sounds and the sensation of being watched. I woke to find my bedroom door open, though I distinctly remembered closing it. The next morning, I called my landlord. "No previous tenants left anything like that," he assured me. "And nobody's had access to your unit except maintenance once when you reported the leaking faucet." "When was that again?" "Your records show that was the day after you moved in." But I'd lived here for 3 years. The faucet issue happened just last month. I hung up and returned to the closet. The suitcase had migrated to the front, no longer buried under coats. The lock now faced outward, almost expectantly. I began documenting everything in a journal: date, time, position of the suitcase, any changes I noticed. After just 2 days, patterns emerged. The suitcase would move slightly when I wasn't looking. The scratches on its surface changed configuration daily, and the warmth it radiated heat like something alive. On the 3rd night, I woke to a soft scraping sound. The suitcase had somehow moved from the closet to the center of my bedroom floor. The lock faced my bed. I approached it cautiously, heart hammering against my ribs. Something was different about it now. The surface seemed to pulse slightly, expanding and contracting in a rhythm that matched my breathing. I couldn't look away, couldn't retreat. I found myself kneeling before it, fingers trembling as they caressed the combination lock. This time, when I spun the dials randomly, they clicked into place with unnerving precision. The lock fell open in my hand. My throat constricted. I should call someone, document this. But who would believe me? Instead, I lifted my phone and began recording. I'm about to open a suitcase that appeared in my closet, I narrated, voice hardly recognizing my own voice. I don't know where it came from or what's inside. The clasps made a satisfying metallic click as I released them. The lid remained closed, but I could feel a change in pressure in the room, as if the air had become thicker. With the camera still recording, I slowly lifted the lid. Empty, the suitcase was completely empty. No, not empty, the interior was lined with a material I couldn't identify. Not fabric, not plastic, but something in between. Dark maroon with subtle patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. The lining was warm to the touch and slightly damp, like skin after mild exertion. Relief and confusion washed over me simultaneously. What had I expected? A body, contraband, some explanation for the movement, the warmth. I ran my fingers along the interior, searching for hidden compartments. Near the back hinge, I felt something aseam that shouldn't be there. Pressing firmly, a hidden pocket revealed itself, containing a single folded sheet of paper. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The paper contained a single line of text, written in what appeared to be my own handwriting. Close it before it recognizes you. Cold fear gripped me. I looked back at the suitcase and froze. The lining was pulsing visibly now, the patterns coalescing into structures that resembled organs, a circulatory system, digestive tract, neural networks. I dropped the paper and slammed the lid shut, fumbling with the clasps and lock. My recording captured my panicked breathing, the sound of metal against metal as I secured it. That night I dragged the suitcase outside to the communal dumpster. It felt heavier than before, resistant to my efforts. When I finally hoisted it over the edge and heard it thud against the bottom, I felt a strange pain in my chest, as if something inside me had been severed. I returned to my apartment and slept deeply for the first time in days. Morning broke with a sense of normalcy restored. I showered, dressed, made coffee. Opening my closet to select a shirt, I froze. The suitcase sat there exactly where it had been before, looking untouched. But now a small puddle of dark liquid seeped from beneath it, staining the carpet. I approached cautiously. The liquid wasn't blood, too viscous, more like honey or resin. It smelled faintly metallic and organic, like the inside of a seashell. My phone chimed with a notification, a new email from an address composed of random numbers and letters. The subject line read, "Watch your recording." With trembling fingers, I opened the video I'd taken the previous night. It played normally at first, my voice narrating, the suitcase opening. But when the camera panned to show the interior, what I saw wasn't the maroon lining. It was my own face looking up from inside the suitcase. Not a reflection, my actual face, mouth moving silently, eyes wide with recognition. The me inside the suitcase raised a finger to its lips in a shushing gesture. The recording ended abruptly. I looked back at the suitcase, now leaking more profusely. The liquid seemed to be forming a pattern on my carpet letters, words. "You opened it," the fluid spelled out. My reflection in the bedroom mirror caught my attention. Something was different. My movements seemed delayed by fractions of seconds, my expressions slightly misaligned with my emotions. I raised my hand. My reflection raised its hand a moment later. I stepped backward. My reflection remained still before smiling at me. The suitcase clicked open by itself. Over the following days, I maintained my routine with mechanical precision. I went to work, spoke with colleagues, ate meals, watched shows, but something fundamental had changed. The world seemed slightly off-register, colors too vivid, sounds muffled, then suddenly too sharp. My colleagues didn't notice anything different about me, but I caught my neighbor watching me intently in the hallway, his expression unreadable. "Did you get rid of it?" he asked suddenly. "Get rid of what?" "Never mind," he muttered, retreating into his apartment. At night, I dreamed of being packed inside a suitcase, knees drawn to chest, traveling to unknown destinations. In these dreams, I felt strangely content. The suitcase remained in my closet, now a permanent fixture. I no longer attempted to remove it. The lock remained open, though I never lifted the lid again. One morning, I noticed something peculiar while brushing my teeth. A small seam had formed along my forearm, similar to the one I'd discovered inside the suitcase. When pressed, it opened slightly, revealing not blood and tissue, but a material identical to the suitcase lining. I began finding notes around my apartment, written in my handwriting. "We are fine now. The transition is nearly complete. Soon there will be no separation." My journal entries became increasingly disjointed. On one page, I documented the suitcase as usual. On the next, unrecognizable symbols and diagrams, drawings of what appeared to be anatomical structures that were neither human nor anything I could identify. The suitcase grew, not visibly, not in a way anyone else would notice, but I knew. It now occupied more space than was physically possible within the dimensions of my closet. Sometimes at night I would open my closet door to find not clothing hanging there, but a vast space, much larger than my apartment, lined entirely with the same maroon material. In the center, another suitcase identical to the first but pristine, unscratched. I stopped telling the difference between dreaming and waking. Reality became fluid, boundaries dissolving. People began asking if I was feeling well. Apparently, I would stop mid-conversation, staring at nothing for minutes before continuing as if nothing had happened. My skin felt too tight, my thoughts too liquid. Last night, I made a decision. I opened the suitcase and climbed inside. It should have been impossible, the dimensions too small for an adult body, but I folded myself into it with surprising ease. The interior welcomed me, reshaping itself around my form. The maroon lining felt like coming home. I pulled the lid closed over me. Within the darkness, I finally understood. The suitcase hadn't appeared in my closet, I had appeared in its world. A temporary anomaly, a visitor who needed to return. As the clasps secured themselves, I felt my body dissolving, merging with the lining. No pain, only release. Now I wait in my apartment for the next occupant. The closet holds a single item, a hardshell suitcase, scuffed and locked. I know they'll find it eventually. They always do. I feel them approaching even now. Soon they'll notice something out of place. They'll become curious. they'll document the mystery. And in doing so, they'll begin the process of returning, just as I did. The suitcase isn't mine, it never was. I am the suitcase, and soon they will be too. Story 7, it was an old picture from college taken at a party years ago. We were laughing, holding drinks, leaning into each other, but as I flipped through the album, my stomach tightened. There was a woman standing behind us, pale, expressionless. I asked my friends. None of them remembered her, and in the next photo, she was closer. I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, surrounded by scattered photographs. The yellow light from my bedside lamp cast long shadows across the room as I stared at the mysterious figure. She wore a simple white dress, her dark hair falling past her shoulders. Her eyes, that's what disturbed me most, they seemed to look directly at the camera, directly at me now. "Who are you?" I whispered to the glossy paper, running my finger across her face. When I called Michael, the friend who'd taken the photos, his response chilled me. "What woman? There wasn't anyone else there." I flipped to the next photo. Same party, same friends. The woman had moved from the back of the group to standing just behind my right shoulder. Her hand I hadn't noticed before was partially raised, as if reaching toward me. Sleep came reluctantly that night, my dreams filled with a woman I couldn't quite see, standing just at the edge of my vision. Morning brought a determination to solve this mystery. I dug through more old photos, albums I hadn't opened in years. Nothing at first, then a birthday celebration from sophomore year. There she was again, barely visible at the edge of the frame, standing near the doorway. I dropped the photo as if it had burned me. My fingers trembled as I picked up my phone and scrolled through digital memories. Most were recent, well after college, but I kept a few folders of scanned older images. In a group shot from freshman orientation, partially hidden behind a tall student, her face half obscured but unmistakable. I created a wall in my apartment, pinning every photo where she appeared, a constellation of appearances spanning 4 years of college. The pattern was undeniable. She moved closer in each consecutive image, from the periphery of early photos to standing directly behind me in later ones. Her expressions never changed. No smile, no frown, just watching, always watching me. I contacted everyone from those photos, old roommates, classmates, friends I'd drifted from. Some didn't respond. Those who did echoed the same bewilderment. No one else was there. What woman? Are you feeling okay? I wasn't imagining her. The evidence hung on my wall, a paper trail of an impossible presence. Sleep became a rare visitor. I'd wake to the sensation of being watched, my room empty yet somehow occupied, the weight of unseen eyes pressed against my skin. During one sleepless night, I remembered my old journals. College assignments required keeping detailed accounts of our experiences, a practice I'd maintained through graduation. I retrieved the stack from a storage box, flipping through pages of faded ink. My heart stopped when I found the entry, a strange incident from freshman year. I keep seeing the same woman around campus. Nobody else seems to notice her. When I point her out, she's gone. Am I losing my mind? I had forgotten this completely. The entry continued. I tried to take a picture of her today. When I checked my camera, the frame was empty. Cold sweat beaded on my forehead as I turned the page. She spoke to me today. I was alone in the library stacks. She said only, "I've been waiting for you to see me." When I turned around, no one was there. The journal fell from my shaking hands. I had written this. I had experienced this. How could I have forgotten? I returned to my photo wall with new urgency. In the last college photo taken at graduation, she stood directly beside me, her shoulder touching mine. My friends flanked my other side, smiling, oblivious. What came after graduation? I searched through more recent photos, nothing at first. Then a work function from 3 years ago. In the background, blurred but recognizable, her. The realization hit me like physical pain. She had followed me beyond college. I started noticing things around my apartment, objects slightly moved from where I'd left them. The scent of unfamiliar perfume lingering in empty rooms, the shower wet when I hadn't used it. My reflection in mirrors began to trouble me. Sometimes, for a fraction of a second, my movements seemed delayed, as if my reflection were deciding whether to follow. One morning I found a photograph on my kitchen table I didn't remember taking or placing there. A selfie, apparently shot while I slept, my unconscious face peaceful against white pillows. And there, lying beside me, her eyes wide open, staring at the camera, the woman. I didn't scream. Somehow this confirmation brought a strange calm. I was beyond fear now, moving into acceptance. That night I set up my phone to record myself sleeping. Morning revealed nothing unusual in the video, just me tossing and turning. But when I watched it again, I noticed something in the audio. Beneath my breathing, barely audible whispering. I enhanced the sound as best I could. I've been with you for so long, why won't you remember me? The voice raised goosebumps on my skin, familiar somehow. I returned to my journals, reading every entry from college with new attention. References to the woman appeared sporadically, then stopped abruptly midway through senior year. The final mention. I've decided to stop acknowledging her. The psychiatrist says she's not real. The medication helps. If I ignore her, perhaps she'll disappear. My hands shook as another memory surfaced. The psychiatric ward, the lost weeks. The diagnosis I'd buried so deeply I'd convinced myself it never happened. That evening, sitting in my darkened living room, I felt the couch cushion depressed beside me. A subtle shift, as if someone had joined me. The air grew cold against my skin. I remember now, I whispered to the empty space. You were my roommate freshman year. The lights flickered once. You disappeared during winter break. They never found you. A soft sigh seemed to circle the room. I continued. I found your journal. I read it. I knew what happened to you. The television switched on by itself, static filling the screen. Within the white noise, I could almost discern a face. You wrote about him, the professor, what he did, what he threatened to do if you told anyone. My phone lit up on the coffee table, opening to my photo gallery without being touched. It cycled to an image I'd never seen: my freshman dorm room and two young women smiling at the camera, me and her. I promised to help you, to go with you to report him, but I got scared. I didn't show up, and after what happened to you, I couldn't handle the guilt. The air around me seemed to solidify, pressing against my skin. So I erased you, convinced myself you never existed, until my mind couldn't hold the lie anymore and found another way to make you real. My laptop opened across the room, the document app launching. Words appeared on the screen, typing themselves. You remember now. Yes, I whispered, I remember everything. My phone camera activated, taking a picture of the apparently empty room. When I looked at the image, she sat beside me on the couch, no longer the menacing figure from my photos, but the young woman I'd known, eyes sad and questioning. "What can I do?" I asked the air around me. The answer came as a whisper against my ear. "Tell my story." I nodded slowly, reaching for my laptop. As I began to type, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, a burden carried for years without conscious knowledge. The photographs still hang on my wall. In them she remains, but her position has changed. No longer approaching, no longer threatening. Now she simply stands beside me like the friend she once was. Sometimes when I wake in the night, I feel her presence nearby, not menacing, not vengeful, waiting, my punishment and my redemption wrapped into one impossible haunting. I failed her once with my silence. I won't fail her again. Her story fills pages now, evidence compiled, names recorded. Soon, I'll take it to people who can act on it, who can bring justice where I once brought only betrayal. She deserves that much, we both do. The stranger in my photos was never a stranger at all. She was the friend I abandoned, the guilt I couldn't face, the truth I tried to erase. And now she's the voice that won't let me forget again. Story 8, it started as a buzz white noise crackling through the speaker when I made calls. But today, in the middle of a voicemail playback, I heard it, my name, whispered clear just beneath the static. The air in the room turned cold, tinged with the scent of ozone and something like burnt fabric. I replayed the message. This time, the whisper came earlier. At first, I convinced myself it was just audio compression, a glitch in the system. My phone was old, after all. The screen had a hairline crack running across the bottom right corner, and the battery drained faster than it should. But when I listened a third time with my ear pressed against the speaker, I heard not just my name but a question. Can you hear me now? I placed the phone on my kitchen counter and took a step back. The marble surface felt unusually cool under my fingertips as I steadied myself. A shiver ran down my spine, not from fear, not yet, but from a strange curiosity that tugged at the edges of my mind. That night I dreamt of radio towers and transmission signals, of voices carried through the air like invisible birds. I woke to find my phone had moved from the nightstand to the floor, the screen glowing with a notification. One missed call, no number. The voicemail icon blinked insistently, a small red one that seemed brighter than usual. I hesitated before pressing play, holding the phone slightly away from my ear. The static came immediately, not a soft hiss, but a wall of white noise that seemed to fill the room, pressing against my eardrums and making the windows vibrate ever so slightly. Then silence, then breathing, not mine. "I've been watching you," said a voice that seemed to come not from the phone, but from inside my own head. "You're the only one who can hear me." I dropped the phone onto my bed. It bounced once, twice, then lay still, screen dark. When I picked it up again, the voicemail was gone. That day I bought a new phone. The salesperson was helpful, transferring my contacts, my photos, my apps. Everything moved over seamlessly. I paid extra for a protective case and screen protector, as if these plastic shields could guard against whatever had infected my old device. For 2 days, everything was normal. The sound was clear, calls connected without issue, no strange messages appeared. I began to relax, to convince myself that whatever had happened was indeed just a technical malfunction. Then the new phone started to warm in my pocket, growing hotter until I had to take it out. The screen showed nothing unusual, but when I brought it to my ear, I could hear a faint hum, like distant machinery or the buzz of power lines. That night I recorded the sound. I set my phone on my desk, opened the voice recorder app, and let it run while I slept. In the morning, I played it back. The first hour was just the ambient sounds of my apartment, the refrigerator cycling on and off, occasional cars passing outside, the building settling. Then, around the 3-hour mark, the static began. It started so softly I had to increase the volume to hear it, but it grew steadily louder until it dominated the recording. And beneath it, voices, multiple now, whispering my name, asking questions, making statements I couldn't quite make out. I slowed the playback, increased the bass, tried to filter out the noise, but the words remained just beyond comprehension, like listening to a conversation underwater. I became obsessed with deciphering the messages. I downloaded audio editing software, spent hours adjusting frequencies, isolating sounds. I started recording everything: phone calls, ambient noise in different rooms, the static between radio stations. My walls became covered with printouts of sound waves, notes about patterns I thought I detected, transcriptions of what I believed the voices were saying. We need you. The door is opening. They're coming through. Friends stopped calling. I stopped answering anyway. Food delivery became my lifeline to the outside world, and even then I spoke to the drivers through the door, sliding cash through the mail slot. The static began to appear in other devices. My laptop speakers emitted it when no applications were running. My wireless earbuds hummed with it even when disconnected from my phone. The small radio in my bathroom picked it up between stations, louder and clearer than before. I took photographs of my screens when the static appeared. In one, I captured something in the pixelation: a face, or what might have been a face, distorted and stretched across the digital noise. The eyes were dark voids, the mouth a black slash across pale skin. I printed this image and added it to my wall. When I woke the next morning, the face in the picture had changed. The mouth was open now, as if in mid-speech or silent scream. I touched the paper with trembling fingers. It felt warm, almost damp, as if recently printed, though the ink was dry. As my fingertip traced the outline of that gaping mouth, the static in my apartment grew louder, coming from my phone, my computer, my electric toothbrush, the digital clock by my bed. A symphony of electronic noise rising in volume until I pressed my hands against my ears and screamed for it to stop. And it did. Sudden silence fell like a heavy blanket. Then my phone chimed with a text message notification. "Look outside," it read. I moved to the window and peeled back the corner of the curtain I had kept drawn for weeks. The sky was the wrong color, not blue or gray or black, but a swirling mix of colors that shouldn't exist together, like oil on water but vertical, stretching from horizon to zenith. And there were shapes moving across this impossible sky. Dark silhouettes that bent and twisted in ways that defied anatomy, their edges fuzzy and undefined like television static given form. One of these shapes turned toward my window. I couldn't see eyes, but I knew it was looking at me. I knew it recognized me. My phone vibrated in my hand, a new text message. "We found you through the static. Now we're coming through." The air in my apartment grew thick, charged with electricity. My skin prickled with goosebumps and my hair stood on end. The scent of ozone returned, stronger now, mixed with something organic and decaying. My reflection in the window glass began to shift, the features rearranging themselves into something that wasn't me. The mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear but somehow understood. The static is the space between worlds. You've been listening, we've been answering. My phone grew scalding hot. I tried to drop it, but my fingers wouldn't respond. The screen cracked from the heat, but instead of going dark, it glowed brighter, static filling the display, pulsing in rhythm with my rapid heartbeat. The world around me began to dissolve into the same static, the walls, the floor, my own hands. Reality itself seemed to lose resolution, breaking down into billions of black and white pixels that hummed with that same electronic noise. In that moment of dissolution, I understood. The static wasn't just noise, it was a language, a doorway, a living thing. And it had been seeking me specifically, calling my name, waiting for me to answer. My consciousness spread thin across the static, and I became aware of other worlds pressing against my own, separated by nothing more than frequency and wavelength. I felt millions of voices, all speaking at once in that language of electronic noise. The boundaries between my body and the air around me blurred. I was becoming one with the static, my thoughts transforming into pure signal. With my last moment of human awareness, I reached for my recorder and pressed the button. If someone finds this, if someone hears my voice beneath the noise, know this, the static is listening. It knows your name too, and once you hear it call you, it never stops. My body is gone now, but my consciousness persists, spread across radio waves, television signals, phone calls, and internet connections. I am the whisper in your earbuds, the buzz in your speakers, the face you almost see in the pixelation of a poor connection. I'm still here, fragmented but aware, and I'm not alone in the static. We're all here, watching, waiting, whispering. Can you hear me now? Story 9, I was alone. The bathroom door was shut. The steam rose slowly as I reached for the curtain and froze. Behind it, a silhouette stood still, not moving, not shifting. The air was thick with moisture and something sharp, like mold and metal. I spoke, barely a whisper, no answer. I pulled the curtain back, nothing there, but the shape had been too detailed to be just steam. A thin film of condensation had gathered on the mirror. I wiped it away with my palm, the glass cool against my skin. My reflection stared back, ordinary and familiar, yet something felt wrong. The bathroom seemed smaller somehow, the walls closer. I finished my shower quickly, my eyes never leaving that curtain. That night I dreamed of standing water and the gentle tap of fingers against glass. I woke to find my bathroom door ajar. I was certain I had closed it. Morning came with a strange heaviness. The kitchen smelled of burnt coffee, though I hadn't made any. My routine felt distorted, like wearing someone else's clothes. Everything fit wrong. I caught myself staring at the bathroom door, closed again, wondering what waited behind it. When I returned from work, I noticed water on the floor. A trail of small puddles led from the bathroom to my bedroom. The carpet squelched under my feet. My sheets were damp, though the windows were closed and the sky had been clear all day. I took photographs. I made recordings on my phone of the empty bathroom. I set up a camera facing the shower. I started a journal documenting everything. The strange humidity that hung in the air even when the heating was on. The smell of metal that seemed to grow stronger each day. The sound of dripping water when all taps were off. The camera revealed nothing unusual, just an empty bathroom. Yet when I watched the footage, I noticed something odd about my own reflection in the mirror. A fractional delay in movement, as if my image were following me rather than moving with me. I began conducting experiments. I placed talcum powder on the bathroom floor before leaving for work. When I returned, there were smudges, not footprints exactly, but disturbances in the powder that couldn't be explained by air currents. I set up a voice recorder while I slept. The playback contained nothing but static and occasionally what sounded like water running through pipes. The mirror became my obsession. Something about my reflection wasn't right. My movements seemed slower, my expressions slightly wrong. I began taking selfies, comparing them to older photographs. In the new ones, my eyes looked darker. My smile never quite reached them. One evening, while brushing my teeth, I noticed a small dark spot on my neck. Not quite a bruise, more like a shadow beneath the skin. When I touched it, the spot was cold. By morning, it had grown to the size of a quarter. By evening, it covered half my neck. The skin there felt numb. I called in sick to work. I couldn't risk anyone seeing the spreading shadow. I covered mirrors, avoided reflective surfaces. Yet I found myself drawn to the bathroom, standing outside the door for hours, listening. Sometimes I heard nothing. Sometimes I heard breathing that wasn't mine. The shadow continued to spread across my chest, down my arm. I documented its progress with my phone camera, the only reflective surface I still allowed myself to use. The photos showed nothing but normal skin. The camera couldn't see what I could feel, the cold, dark stain spreading through me. I became convinced that whatever had been behind that shower curtain was now inside me. Something had crossed over. The boundary between myself and whatever waited in that bathroom was dissolving. One night I woke to find myself standing in the bathroom. The shower was running. Steam filled the room. My pajamas were soaked through. I had no memory of walking there, of turning on the water. The mirror was fogged over except for a clear spot in the center, a perfect circle as if someone had pressed their face against the glass. I approached the mirror, drawn by some force I couldn't resist. In the clear circle, I saw not my face but a darkness, a void shaped like a human figure. I raised my hand. The shadow in the mirror raised its hand too, but a moment too late. I touched the glass. It was warm. Behind me, the shower curtain rustled. I spun around. The curtain was still. Water cascaded down, splashing against the tub. I turned back to the mirror. The fog had reclaimed the clear spot. I wiped it away with my palm. My reflection was gone. Where my face should have been was only bathroom wall, as if I were invisible or had never existed at all. I screamed, but heard no sound. I pounded against the glass, but my fists made no impact. I was being erased. In desperation, I turned to the shower. Steam billowed out from behind the curtain. A silhouette stood there, motionless. My silhouette. I knew with sudden clarity that I needed to reclaim it, to become whole again. I yanked the curtain back. The figure that stood in the shower was me, but not me. It had my face, my body, but its eyes were black pools. It smiled with my mouth. Water ran over its body, which seemed to shift and waver like smoke barely contained in human form. "Who are you?" I asked. My voice sounded distant, as if coming from underwater. The thing with my face stepped out of the shower. Water dripped from its body, but left no puddles on the floor. It reached for me with a hand that seemed too long, fingers stretched like shadows at dusk. "I am becoming you," it said with my voice, "and you are becoming nothing." I backed away, but there was nowhere to go. My back pressed against the mirror. The cold glass felt like ice against my skin, the parts of my skin I could still feel. The rest was numb, consumed by the spreading shadow. The creature that wore my face placed its hand on my chest, directly over the largest patch of shadow. Its touch was like falling into cold water. I gasped as something pulled at me from inside, drawing out some essential part of my being. "Please," I whispered, "stop." It tilted its head, curious. "But you invited me in. You saw me and acknowledged me. You gave me form in your mind." Had I, that first moment, seeing the silhouette behind the curtain, had I created this thing by believing in it, by documenting it, studying it, fearing it? I pushed past the creature toward the shower. The water still ran, steam rising. I had a sudden, desperate idea. If this thing had come from behind the curtain, perhaps it could be sent back. I grabbed the shower curtain and tore it from its rings. The creature hissed, a sound like water hitting hot metal. I threw the curtain over it, wrapping the plastic sheet around its body. It struggled, its form becoming liquid under the curtain, seeping through the plastic. I forced it toward the drain. The creature fought, its limbs stretching unnaturally, grasping at the walls at me. But I was stronger now, fueled by terror and determination. I pushed it down toward the dark circle of the drain. The shadow began to flow from my skin, drawn toward the creature as it compressed, twisted, thinned, becoming a dark liquid that spiraled down the drain. The bathroom filled with a high keening sound that made my teeth ache, then silence. I stood there panting, staring at the empty shower. The curtain lay crumpled and wet on the tub floor. The shadow had receded from my skin, leaving only a small dark spot on my wrist, the size of a fingerprint. I looked at the mirror. My reflection had returned, but something about it remained wrong. My eyes seemed deeper set. My smile, when I attempted one, looked practiced, artificial. I touch the mirror, my reflection touches back. But sometimes, when I'm not looking directly at it, I catch movement in the glass that doesn't match my own. And the small shadow on my wrist grows darker when I sleep. Every morning I wake to find the bathroom door open. Every evening I close it firmly. Every night I dream of standing water and fingers tapping against glass, trying to get in. Or perhaps trying to get out. Story 10, the rain cascaded down with a mesmerizing cadence on the rooftop, weaving a natural symphony that enveloped the night in a cloak of tranquility. Nestled in my cherished armchair, a cup of chamomile tea turned cold in my grasp, I found myself lost in the soothing melody of the raindrops. Amidst this serene ambience, a faint whisper of sound captured my attention, a delicate echo blending with the rain's rhythm, soft footsteps seemingly emerging from the depths of the basement. Initially, I dismissed it as the house settling, for aged dwellings possess a language of their own, communicating through gentle creaks and murmurs, especially on damp, rainy nights when the wooden structure swells with humidity. Yet there was an uncanny precision to these sounds, a cadence that mirrored human footsteps with eerie accuracy. With deliberate movements, I rose from my seat, setting the cup down on the nearby table. The wooden floor beneath me exuded a subtle warmth, remnants of the day's fading heat. As I neared the basement door, a chill permeated the air, sending a shiver down my spine. The brass handle, cool to the touch, clicked softly as I turned it, the sound reverberating in the silent house. The staircase unraveled into darkness, pierced only by a faint bluish glow filtering through the skylight above. Descending cautiously, my own footsteps mingled with the enigmatic ones that had beckoned me earlier. The familiar scent of the basement, ancient wood, damp earth, and other elusive fragrances grew stronger with each step downward. In the dimly lit basement, shadows danced on the walls, synchronized with the flickering lightning outside. Shelves laden with forgotten relics cast eerie shapes that seemed to sway in time with the rain's symphony. It was then that I noticed an anomaly. Faint footprints etched in the dusty floor, not typical imprints, but ethereal traces of moisture, as if someone with damp soles had traced circles in the center of the room. Drawing closer, I pondered the origin of these mysterious marks. The skylight remained intact, ruling out any water seepage. As I scrutinized the enigmatic footprints, a subtle movement in the shadowy corner seized my gaze. In the darkest recesses, where light dared not tread, a slow, almost imperceptible motion hinted at an unseen presence. Heart pulsing with a blend of curiosity and a strange sense of recognition, I approached the obscure corner, the air turning colder with each step. The echoes of footsteps heard from above reverberated once more, no longer confined to a single point but enveloping the entire chamber, as if an unseen figure traversed every inch simultaneously. It dawned on me then the footprints on the floor formed a deliberate pattern, a spiral converging towards the room's center. Tracking the spiral with intent, I noticed the freshest prints glistening with moisture as if freshly made. Time seemed to stand still as I stood transfixed, watching these traces dissipate into the frigid basement air, the footsteps fading into the symphony of rainfall outside. Ascending the stairs, a peculiar sense of calm enveloped me, as though I had borne witness to an ancient, enigmatic ritual that transcended time within the house's depths. That night, as I readied for slumber, the rain's melody took on a new dimension. It echoed the rhythmic cadence of those mysterious footsteps from below. Drifting into dreams, I pondered whether the footsteps would return, and if I would muster the courage to unravel the secrets of those ethereal footprints amidst the dust, hidden in the depths of my abode. Story 11. The autumn mist draped the streets like a soft, gray shroud, casting a hazy glow around each street lamp in the quiet of night. After a long shift at work, I embarked on my journey home, and that's when I first glimpsed it, a pair of headlights in the mist, trailing behind me at a steady distance. It was a subtle sensation that pricked at my awareness, a whisper in my mind hinting at the peculiarity of the unchanging proximity of that car following my every turn. The gentle hum of its engine felt like a breath synchronized with my own, a silent companion on my solitary drive. When I slowed, it slowed. When I quickened, it matched my pace. In the rearview mirror, all I could discern was a dark outline, a sedan perhaps, its headlights akin to vigilant eyes never straying from me. As I navigated the winding road of the residential area, the still houses exuded an air of serenity that clashed with the growing unease in my chest. Curiosity piqued, I deviated from my usual route, opting for a longer path. Yet the car persisted, maintaining that hypnotic distance that now felt strangely familiar. The pitter-patter of rain on the windshield wove a soothing melody, a stark contrast to the eerie scenario unfolding. Rivulets of rain cascaded down the windows, further obscuring my view of the persistent presence behind me. I veered onto side streets, one after another, the mysterious car mirroring my every move as if tethered by an unseen bond. Through the tranquil neighborhood, we continued our nocturnal dance, the headlights trailing me like a faithful shadow. At a red light, a fleeting glimpse through the rain-smeared glass hinted at a figure in the motionless driver's seat of the car behind me. Deciding to return home, I parked in the driveway and shut off the engine. In the ensuing stillness, the only sounds were the raindrops drumming on the car roof and the rhythm of my own heartbeat. Through the rearview mirror, I watched as the car softly halted several yards away, its headlights piercing through the darkness. Minutes stretched like taut elastic, then gradually the headlights dimmed. In the obscurity of the street, I discerned the silhouette of the vehicle lingering. Summoning my courage, I exited the car, shielding myself from the rain with my jacket. But when I turned to inspect closer, the street lay barren, devoid of the car that had trailed me. Since that fateful night, whenever I drive post-sunset, I find myself glancing at the rearview mirror more frequently than before. And on fog-laden evenings, I catch a glimpse of those familiar headlights in the distance, patient and unwavering. I ponder whether that car still prowls the night in pursuit of another, or if it bides its time, waiting for the opportune moment to rejoin me in a nocturnal waltz through the city streets. Story 12. In the hush of the night, the echo of my footsteps danced along the time-worn wooden corridor. Each step I took caused the floorboards to sigh beneath me, a gentle rhythm blending with the pitter-patter of rain on the window panes. The air held a rich sweetness, a tapestry woven of aged wood and the musty fragrance of old paper. Standing before the door at the far end of the hallway, a room untouched for months, I felt a pull from within its depths. The lock shimmered faintly in the soft glow of the wall sconces, beckoning me closer. I vividly recalled locking it last, the familiar routine of turning the key 3 times, ensuring the handle was secure. Yet this evening carried a subtle shift in the air. A chill lingered around the door, a fine layer of dust coating the brass handle in intricate swirls, as if an unseen hand had traced patterns upon it. The wood itself exuded a gentle warmth, a paradox within the closed-off room devoid of heating. Pressing my palm against the door, I felt its faint heat, a whisper of life behind the barrier. Leaning in, I strained to catch any sound beyond the door's facade. In the stillness, a faint murmur akin to the slow breath of a slumbering soul reached my ears. Retrieving the key from the folds of my robe, its unexpected warmth against my skin sent a shiver down my spine. With deliberate care, I inserted the key into the lock, the metallic click muffled in the silence. As the door creaked open, a wave of warmth and fragrance enveloped me, reminiscent of freshly brewed vanilla tea. The moon's gentle light filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a silver sheen over the room. Everything appeared unchanged, yet subtly rearranged. Books on the shelves formed cryptic patterns, the armchair nudged closer to the window, an empty cup resting on the side table. Tracing my fingers along the desk's polished surface, I encountered an uneven layer of dust, as if invisible words had once been penned and erased. A yellowed sheet of paper caught my eye, bearing a sentence penned in a handwriting mirroring mine, yet foreign to my memory. "Time flows differently here," the words whispered. In that moment, my breath synchronized with the gentle sway of the curtains, a harmony in the stillness. The room pulsed with a quiet vitality, a symphony of whispers too faint to decipher. Sinking into the velvet armchair, I caught a glimpse of a fleeting figure in the window's reflection, a specter vanishing into the shadows. Eyes closed, I embraced the tranquility, only to find the room subtly altered upon opening them. Objects had shifted imperceptibly, the once gold cup now warm to the touch, tendrils of steam curling upwards. Rising from the chair, I felt the weight of the enigma surrounding me. Silent steps carried me back towards the door, the wooden floor betraying no sound. Pausing at the threshold, I cast a final glance over the room. It seemed to breathe, a slumbering entity, its secrets veiled in the whispers of the night. Gently closing the door, the lock clicked into place, a lullaby in the quiet of the hallway. Since that night, a faint scent of vanilla tea lingers near the door, accompanied by the rustle of pages turned by unseen hands. The room holds its secrets close, a realm best left undisturbed, its mysteries shrouded in the embrace of silence. Story 13. Snow drifted down quietly that evening in my cozy antique shop. The delicate flakes pirouetted behind the windows, bathed in the gentle glow of vintage lamps, casting a soft and inviting aura. The aged wooden shelves murmured softly as I arranged the volumes, harmonizing with the steady cadence of the pendulum clock's hands. A nostalgic blend of old books and beeswax lingered in the air, a scent that whispered tales of bygone eras. The doorbell chimed with a crystalline tinkle, ushering in a breath of cold air that carried a few snowflakes, melting swiftly on the wooden floor. Turning to greet the visitor, I was momentarily struck by a tall, enigmatic figure standing at the threshold. Draped in a dark coat that seemed to swallow the light, a wide-brimmed hat shadowed their upper face while a gray wool scarf veiled the lower. "Good evening," I murmured, striving for a composed demeanor despite a subtle shiver snaking down my spine. The visitor remained silent, gliding gracefully amongst the shelves, their gloved hands delicately skimming the displayed treasures. There was a mesmerizing quality to their movements, as if they danced to an unseen melody. I found myself captivated by their every gesture, noting the peculiar behavior of light around them. Shadows deepened and thickened, possessing a tangible presence of their own. Pausing before an antique mirror from the 18th century, recently acquired, the visitor's gloved fingers traced the golden frame with deliberate care. The shop was enveloped in a weighty silence, punctuated only by the languid ticking of the clock, each beat stretching into eternity. Tentatively, I tried to catch their reflection in the mirror, only to find an unsettling absence, no trace of their form in the mirrored surface, as though they existed beyond its realm. Approaching cautiously, my steps echoing on the creaking floorboards, I inquired, "Can I assist you in finding something special?" My voice a mere whisper in the charged atmosphere. Slowly, the visitor turned towards me, shadows obscuring where features should be. With a fluid motion, they produced a yellowed paper from their coat pocket, unfolding it meticulously on the counter beside the cash register. The list, penned in elegant, archaic script, detailed curious items: a mirror that remembers, a clock that counts backwards, a key that opens forgotten doors. As I perused the list, a chill seemed to descend upon the shop, my breath materializing in wisps of mist. The objects on the shelves seemed to hum faintly, as if recognizing a kindred essence in the visitor. "I regret," I murmured, "but I fear I do not possess these particular objects." The visitor remained motionless, a silent sentinel, before nodding slowly. Retrieving the paper with graceful precision, they tucked it back into their coat. With a graceful stride, they made their way to the door, pausing before departure. Tilting slightly, a sound more akin to a thought than a voice emerged from the depths of the scarf. "You will," not a query, but a certainty. The bell tolled as they departed, its resonance deeper, as if echoing from afar. Outside, the snow fell unabated, yet for a moment the flakes seemed suspended, frozen in time. That night, upon closing the shop, I scrutinized the antique mirror. Its reflective surface seemed to conceal a hidden depth, a secret veiled within its silvery gaze. And the pendulum clock, the faithful timekeeper, had halted precisely at the moment of the visitor's arrival. Since that night, as twilight descends and shadows lengthen, I find myself gazing towards the door, awaiting the familiar chime. Every item in the shop appears expectant, as if we all share the unspoken knowledge of the visitor's inevitable return. For in an antique shop, each object harbors a tale, and perchance some are yet to begin theirs. Story 14. The autumn mist draped the park like a gentle cloak of gray silk, as leaves swayed lazily in the cool evening breeze. I strolled along the pebbled path, relishing the earthy fragrance mingling with the soft crunch of my steps. Streetlights cast hazy halos in the fog, barely revealing the way ahead. And there it was, catching my eye, a dark coat, neatly folded on a weathered wooden bench. The park was deserted at that late hour, and the garment appeared meticulously placed, as if with purpose. Drawing closer, I observed the woolen fabric absorbing the mist's droplets, its elegance evident in the faint gleam of mother-of-pearl buttons. The coat retained warmth, as though its wearer had just shed it. This detail stirred not fear but intrigue within me. I searched the pockets, hoping for a clue, but found only an old bus ticket from 1985, its paper aged yet intact. Seated beside the coat, I let my mind drift as the fog thickened around me. A subtle scent of lavender and pipe tobacco emanated from the coat, conjuring memories of days long gone. Examining it closely, I discovered faded initials, JM, sewn inside with golden thread. A distant melody interrupted the park's silence, an antique tune reminiscent of bygone eras, its source elusive. Rising from the bench to locate the music, It seemed to surround me from all directions and none at once. Upon returning, I noticed the coat had shifted slightly, its fold imperfect, a button catching the light differently. Yet I remained alone in the park. Time seemed to stretch, shadows dancing among fallen leaves under the dim streetlights. The music faded, leaving me pondering the mysterious JM. Was he a scholar finding solace in the park, a musician seeking inspiration, or a soul releasing the past? Lost in contemplation, a gentle touch brushed my shoulder, fleeting as a whisper of wind. Turning, I found only swirling fog. The coat now appeared aged, as if time had hastened its decay. Respecting its enigma, I departed, the music briefly clearer, a waltz unfamiliar yet oddly familiar. Returning the next day, the bench was vacant, but an imprint marked where the coat had lain, alongside a new bus ticket dated that very day. Even now, on misty evenings, I catch echoes of that distant melody, sensing lavender and tobacco in the air. Sometimes, amid the play of streetlights and mist, I glimpse the silhouette of a refined figure vanishing into the park, dissolving into the rustling leaves. Story 15. Autumn nights in our residential neighborhood carry a touch of magic. The air turns crisp, carrying whispers of fallen leaves and the hushed cadence of footsteps on damp streets. Lately, a peculiar occurrence has captured my attention during my evening strolls home from work. It revolves around the streetlight at the crossroads of Maple Street and Rose Avenue. This particular light stands apart from its companions, for it behaves in a most peculiar manner. Unlike the steadfast glow of the other streetlights, this one harbors a secret. As I draw near, its luminance begins to wane, as if veiling something from my sight. Initially dismissing it as a mere malfunction, I soon found myself drawn to this enigmatic light. It dimmed solely in my presence, a phenomenon that piqued my curiosity. Intrigued, I decided to delve deeper. Leaning against the weathered façade of the Art Deco building, I observed from a distance. The streetlight's beam cast elongated shadows and bathed the surroundings in a soft glow. Advancing cautiously, the light's radiance flickered, diminishing with each step. Standing beneath the dimming light, a peculiar tranquility enveloped me. The night felt pregnant with silence, amplified within the circle of twilight. Peering up at the glass enclosure, faint markings etched an intricate pattern. Straining to discern the shapes, a sudden gust stirred the leaves, unsettling my senses. With the eerie feeling of movement within the glass, I hesitated, uncertain of what lay beyond. In the days that followed, I altered my route to intersect with the mysterious streetlight, each encounter shrouded in intrigue. The ritual unfolded predictably, the light fading, the silence deepening, a sense of unseen observation looming overhead. Details emerged with each encounter, subtle shifts in hue, tones that seemed to convey cryptic messages. One moonlit night, a melodic hum resonated from within the pole, pulsing a rhythmic vibration that I could feel through my fingertips. Captivated by this nocturnal enigma, I meticulously chronicled my visits, noting correlations with lunar phases and the light's behavior. The dimming intensity ebbed and flowed with the moon's cycle, while the light's return to full brightness adhered to a precise rhythm of 23 seconds. Gradually, the streetlight's influence seeped into my routine, guiding my pace and prompting moments of contemplative stillness beneath its muted glow. Resisting the urge to unravel the mystery through scientific inquiry, I embraced the allure of the unknown. In that transient dimness, where shadows dance and time holds its breath, I found solace in the enigmatic connection forged between us. Each evening, as I journey homeward, the streetlight beckons, ushering me into our shared realm of twilight. Engaged in a silent communion, I partake in a surreal waltz with the light that dims at my approach. Whether electrical anomaly or metaphysical enigma, the truth remains shrouded in mystery. What matters is the profound sense of belonging to a grander narrative, where shadows whisper ancient tales and light reveals hidden truths. In that fleeting interlude of darkness, where the world recedes and mysteries unfold, I find myself a willing participant in a nocturnal ballet choreographed by the language of shadows and light. Story 16, the gentle patter of autumn rain whispered against my office window, a soothing lullaby as I immersed myself in my work. The world outside seemed to slow down, cocooned in a blanket of raindrops that created a natural, hypnotic melody. Soft golden light from my desk lamp bathed the yellowed pages of ancient manuscripts I was meticulously cataloging for the city's historical archive. And then she appeared. A solitary figure glided across the square beneath a scarlet-red umbrella, a vibrant splash of color amidst the muted hues of autumn. There was an enchanting quality to her movement, a rhythmic dance with the rain that captivated me. Each evening, like clockwork, the woman with the red umbrella graced the square with her presence. Her nightly crossing became a ritual I eagerly anticipated, a moment of intrigue that stirred my soul. Her face remained veiled by the shadow of her umbrella and the misty rain that followed her like a faithful companion. But one fateful night, as she paused in the center of the square, a fleeting glance in my direction revealed a hint of a smile on her ethereal face, illuminated by the soft glow of street lamps. My heart fluttered at the elusive moment before she continued on her path, disappearing into the cloak of evening fog. In the days that followed, subtle disturbances began to unsettle my study. Water spots inexplicably marred the documents I handled, as if touched by rain-dampened fingers. The delicate fragrance of antique roses lingered in the air, a haunting presence that defied logic, even with all windows tightly shut. And then a mysterious black and white photograph materialized on my desk, depicting the square as it stood half a century ago, with a figure holding a red umbrella amidst the crowd. Intrigued, I delved into the archives and uncovered the tragic tale of Sarah Thompson, a young librarian who once graced the halls of my building. She was known for her red umbrella and her love for ancient tomes, her life tragically cut short in the very square where she now haunted. As I immersed myself in her story, the scent of roses grew stronger, and the rain outside seemed to murmur a forgotten melody. The pages of the documents I perused stirred as if brushed by an unseen hand, a gentle breeze that whispered of a presence unseen. And when I glanced up, there she was, closer than ever before. The red umbrella was folded, revealing her serene countenance, her eyes kind and her smile peaceful. No fear gripped me, only a profound sense of melancholy and empathy. After that poignant encounter, the woman with the red umbrella never graced the square again. Yet on rainy nights, when the archive fell into silence and shadows danced upon the walls, echoes of her footsteps lingered, accompanied by the faint scent of antique roses. Occasionally, while sifting through aged documents, I would discover fresh water droplets, as if someone had just caressed the pages with rain-soaked fingers. I often pondered if Sarah still watched over her cherished books, if her spirit wandered in the rain with her red umbrella in hand. This tale, a bittersweet secret shared between me and the library's shadows, remained untold to others. And whenever rain tapped softly against the windows, a smile would grace my lips, knowing that somewhere in the tapestry of time, a woman with a red umbrella continued her eternal journey. Story 17. In the dim glow of the flickering candle, shadows waltzed across the ancient stone walls as I descended into the depths of the cellar. Each step I took echoed softly, the familiar creak of the wooden stairs a comforting companion on my journey to retrieve Grandma's preserves. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and aged wood, transporting me back to a simpler time, to memories of childhood days gone by. But on this particular evening, a subtle shift in the atmosphere caught my attention. The candle flame danced erratically, defying the stillness of the air, while a fine layer of dust seemed to cloak every surface despite my visit just the day before. The shadows appeared elongated, as if reaching out towards the darkness that awaited at the foot of the stairs. A strange sensation gripped me, halting my descent midway. The wooden shelves, usually ending within a few yards, now stretched further into the darkness, beyond where the candle's feeble light could reach. The silence enveloped me, broken only by the rhythmic beat of my heart and the distant drip of water seeping through the stones. Intrigued by a curiosity that overpowered my apprehension, I pressed on. The jars of preserves, normally gleaming in the candlelight, bore labels with dates from decades past as I ventured deeper. 1980, 1960, 1940, some so faded they were illegible. The air grew colder, carrying a musty scent mingled with the aroma of ancient parchments. The shelves continued to extend, revealing walls adorned with intricate brickwork and mysterious symbols etched into the stone with a precision that defied the era of the house's construction. Pausing before a peculiar shelf, my gaze fixated on a jar unlike the rest. Crafted from dark glass that seemed to swallow light, the label intact, displaying a confounding date, 1820. With trembling hands I lifted it, and in the cellar's hush, a whisper, wordless yet profound, brushed against my ears, a whisper of time itself unfurling, like ancient scrolls stirred by a breeze. Slowly turning, I caught a fleeting glimpse of blurred figures moving in the shadows, ephemeral memories seeking form. Sensing it was time to retreat, I pivoted towards the stairs, only to find the distance I had traversed inexplicably elongated. The light above now a distant speck, akin to a lone star in a vast, lightless expanse. Striving to maintain composure, I ascended, counting each step as though a child once more. As I climbed, the shelves transformed anew, reverting to the familiar cellar I knew, their contents bearing more recent dates, the walls regaining their rough, stony texture. The jar from 1820 remained in my grasp, a reassuring anchor amidst the surreal experience. Reaching the top, the warm glow of the kitchen enveloped me, dispelling the lingering unease. Placing the jar on the first step, I glanced back into the darkness, where a fleeting movement hinted at the distortion of time itself. That night, seated in the kitchen with a steaming cup of tea, I contemplated the events that transpired. The jar now bore a simple label, Blackberry Jam 2023, yet when opened, it exuded a fragrance unlike any other scent redolent of time, sweet and ancient, reminiscent of cherished memories. Since that enigmatic encounter, each descent into the cellar evokes a sense of anticipation. While the stairs and shelves remain unaltered, there are moments, bathed in dim light and profound silence, when the cellar seems to beckon, poised to unveil more temporal enigmas. And perhaps one day I will summon the courage to venture down that seemingly infinite corridor to its culmination, to unravel the mysteries that lie where time surrenders its essence. Story 18, The Night Whispered Its Own Melody, a symphony of gentle sounds harmonizing with the rain's rhythmic drumming on the rooftop. Stirred from slumber once again in the dark hours, a peculiar sight awaited me. A faint glow from the moonlight seeping through the curtains illuminated an unexpected guest on the nightstand, an ancient brass key, adorned with intricate designs that seemed to whisper tales of forgotten eras. Its presence was a mystery, yet a strange sense of familiarity enveloped me as I reached out to touch it. The key's cool touch sent a shiver down my spine, its weight defying its size, bearing the marks of time like a silent witness to bygone days. Examining the key in the dim light revealed its uniqueness, devoid of conventional teeth or grooves. Its surface worn smooth, yet the intricate patterns etched upon it remained sharp and clear. A compulsion stirred within me, urging me to explore, to uncover the key's purpose in the depths of the night. With each step through the house, guided by the key's ethereal glow that cast a subtle blue aura, The familiar spaces seemed transformed, shadows conspiring to create new pathways. As I passed each door, an instinctual urge prompted me to bring the key closer, feeling a subtle resonance vibrating through my fingertips as it neared the wooden surfaces. It wasn't until I reached my study that a subtle shift in the air caught my attention. The antique bookcase, a relic from generations past, seemed to hum in harmony with the key's presence. Drawing closer, the key's glow intensified, casting a pulsating light that danced across the walls, revealing hidden patterns in the wood. Tracing the key along the bookcase's edge, a hushed sound akin to a distant melody reverberated through the room. The key's vibrations grew stronger, as if it had found a kindred spirit in the bookcase's ancient wood. With a touch against the central panel, a profound sigh seemed to echo from the depths of the past. The wood itself rippled, revealing fleeting glimpses of faces and places lost to time, stirring a sense of wonder and trepidation within me. With the dawn's arrival, the night's mysteries dissipated, yet the weight of the key in my hand remained a tangible reminder of the unearthly encounter. Days passed, the key losing its mystical glow yet retaining its enigmatic heaviness. On quiet nights, a faint vibration seemed to emanate from the bookcase, a silent call echoing through the stillness. And though curiosity tugged at my soul, I resisted the urge to unlock further secrets, knowing that some doors are best left unopened, even when the key beckons. Now nestled in a velvet embrace within my writing desk, the key rests, a silent guardian of mysteries yet untold. In the depths of night, when silence reigns supreme, its siren song lingers, a reminder of the night it found me, not the other way around. And I ponder the depths of its secrets, wondering what other enigmas lie within a key without a lock, a key that holds the whispers of forgotten times. Story 19. The soft, steady cadence of raindrops against my window had become a familiar companion during my late-night writing sessions. Each droplet followed a winding path down the glass, creating a mesmerizing tapestry of shimmering light. The warm amber glow from my desk lamp enveloped me in a comforting sphere of light, casting the rest of the room into soothing darkness. I found myself lost in the intricate dance of the rain, seeking out hidden tales within the glistening trails they left behind. On this particular night, however, there was a subtle shift in the rain's movements. The water seemed to flow in mysterious patterns, as if guided by an unseen force. Initially, I dismissed it as a trick of my weary eyes, nearly succumbing to the tranquil embrace between wakefulness and dreams. Yet the peculiar patterns persisted, drawing me further into their enigmatic allure. As I gazed intently, I noticed the droplets avoiding certain areas on the glass, forming dry patches that slowly took on the shape of a figure. Intrigued, I leaned in for a closer look, only to find not just the rain's reflection, but also the dimly lit interior of my room behind me. A sense of unease crept over me as I observed my own reflection, detecting a subtle delay in its movements compared to my own. The gentle symphony of rain intensified, its rhythmic melody filling the room and drowning out all other sounds. Entranced, I watched as my reflection's hand reached out to touch the glass, mirroring actions that my own hand did not take. A warmth enveloped me, contrasting the cool air by the window as the features of my reflection began to transform before my eyes. The face staring back at me transcended gender and age, exuding an aura of timelessness and ancient wisdom. Motionless, I witnessed my reflection evolve into an enigmatic being, its eyes holding a depth that seemed to span eons. The rain encircled this ethereal figure in a radiant frame of liquid silver, the droplets defying gravity in intricate, mesmerizing patterns. A flicker of my desk lamp momentarily dimmed the room, and in that fleeting darkness I sensed a presence beside me, gentle and reassuring. When the light steadied, my reflection returned to its normal state, perfectly mirroring my actions. Yet the rain continued its enchanting dance in flawless circles, a silent reminder of the extraordinary encounter that had transpired. Throughout the night, I remained by the window, contemplating the profound experience I had just lived through. The lingering presence felt akin to a cherished memory, neither intrusive nor menacing. With the approaching dawn, the rain gradually tapered off, leaving behind only mundane streaks on the window. Now on rainy evenings, I find myself drawn to that window, setting aside my writing materials. In moments when the rainfall creates a perfect mirror, I catch glimpses of that enigmatic reflection watching me from the other side. There exists an unspoken connection between us, a shared understanding that some mysteries are not meant to be unraveled, but rather embraced. The rain continues to fall, carrying with it the promise of further encounters. And in those fleeting instants of mutual observation, I ponder the existence of another version of myself, seated by their own window, yearning for a glimpse into my world through the gossamer threads of rain. Story 20. The November breeze whispered through the dry leaves scattered on the driveway as I gazed at the shadow of the forsaken mansion against the somber sky. Known as the never-inhabited house, a misnomer for it had harbored a resident long ago, a forgotten soul lost to time. Yet the identity of the past dweller remained a mystery shrouded in obscurity. Approaching the weathered gate, my fingers felt the chill of the wrought iron bars, a stark contrast to the warmth of the autumn day. The air carried a distinct aroma of moss and damp stone, enveloping me in its earthy embrace. The garden, overrun by unruly brambles and nettles, crept up the weathered walls, nature's reclaiming touch on the decaying estate. Despite its dilapidation, the mansion exuded a forlorn elegance that lingered in the air. In my capacity as a real estate agent, tasked with assessing the property's worth, I ventured into the neglected grounds. The current owner, a distant gentleman residing overseas, sought to divest himself of this ancestral burden. Having never set foot on the premises, he had inherited the house from a long-lost relative, now eager to sever ties with the past. Amidst the overgrowth, I noticed peculiar traces of paths, as if someone had treaded through the desolate garden recently. Yet the neighbors insisted that no living soul dared to trespass upon the property's desolate domain. With a soft creak, the front door yielded to my touch, revealing an interior cloaked in a bluish haze that filtered through the closed shutters. The air hung heavy with dust, mingled with the faint scent of aged wood, a testament to the bygone days of grandeur. Each step on the creaking floorboards echoed through the main salon, where furniture draped in yellowed sheets cast ghostly silhouettes in the dim light. The colossal veiled mirrors adorning the walls played tricks with the scant illumination, casting ethereal reflections that danced in the gloom. Ascending the staircase, my hand grazed the polished wooden railing, worn smooth by the touch of countless hands over the years. Along the upper corridor, a series of closed doors beckoned me, each revealing empty rooms save for a few shrouded pieces of furniture. It was in the last chamber that a sense of unease settled upon me. A feminine touch lingered in the room, a delicate disturbance amidst the layers of dust that coated every surface. A silver brush lay on the dresser, accompanied by a cascade of dark, unblemished hair that defied the aging veil of neglect. The bed, meticulously made, bore a faint impression as if recently occupied, sending a shiver down my spine. As I turned to depart, a fleeting movement in the mirror caught my eye, a phantom presence seated upon the bed, a specter from another time. Startled, I pivoted, only to find the room devoid of corporeal beings, though the sensation of a watchful gaze lingered. Descending the stairs with hastened steps, the salon seemed to shift with the changing light, shadows deepening in the corners as if concealing hidden truths. A soft, haunting melody drifted down from above, a melancholic tune that tugged at the strings of memory. Was it the wind whispering through the shutters, or a figment of my imagination? Exiting the mansion, I closed the door behind me, the stillness of the garden enveloping me in a blanket of silence. Glancing back at the facade, a flicker of movement behind an upstairs window caught my eye, a fleeting glimpse of a spectral figure vanishing into the shadows. In the days that followed, I meticulously crafted my report on the property, detailing its state of disrepair and probable market value, omitting the peculiar occurrences within its walls. Yet a cryptic notation found its way onto the page. The property possesses a singular allure that may captivate a discerning buyer. The house lingered on the market, a relic of a bygone era waiting for its next steward. Occasionally I would pause by the rusted gate, casting a wistful gaze at the imposing structure. Each time a phantom presence seemed to glide through the upper chambers, a silent sentinel awaiting an unknown visitor. Perhaps the enigma of the never-inhabited house lay not in its vacancy, but in the eternal occupancy of a spectral resident, forever bound to its melancholic halls. Story 21. The gentle evening wind whispered through the garden, carrying the delicate fragrance of night-blooming flowers. Nestled in my favorite armchair, I found myself entranced by the shadows dancing on the walls, painted by the flickering candlelight. Beside me, an old Polaroid camera, a cherished gift from my grandmother, lay still on the small table. Despite not having used it in ages, a mysterious urge prompted me to pick it up on this particular night. The comforting weight of the camera in my hands guided me to explore its familiar features in the dim glow. My fingers instinctively found their way to the shutter button, a motion ingrained from countless captures of the past. Without hesitation, I directed the lens towards the darkest corner of the room and clicked. The flash briefly illuminated the space, followed by the mechanical hum of the photograph materializing. Patiently, I watched as colors emerged on the blank canvas. A peculiar sight greeted my eyes. In the corner I had aimed at, an ethereal figure materialized in the photograph. Its form was vague, resembling wisps of smoke coalescing into a semblance of a human shape. Although blurry, it seemed to hover in the air just out of reach. Instinctively, I glanced towards the corner in reality, but it remained empty. Intrigued by this spectral visitor, I took another photo in the same direction. To my astonishment, the figure in the subsequent image was more distinct, as if drawing nearer to the lens. A faint outline of a face emerged, its features obscured yet tantalizingly close to recognition. A thrill tingled down my spine, not of fear, but of a deep-seated fascination. Compelled by an invisible force, I continued to capture frame after frame, each unveiling the figure in a progressive clarity. It was as though the entity used the photographs as a conduit to manifest itself, gaining substance with every shot. The amorphous silhouette gradually solidified, revealing a garment reminiscent of a bygone era, perhaps the 1940s. A profound stillness enveloped the room, the silence pregnant with an unseen presence that reverberated through my senses. The air grew heavy, the candle flame flickering in defiance of any breeze. Undeterred, I persisted in my silent exchange through the lens, each click forging a stronger connection with the mysterious apparition. In the final photograph of that mystical evening, the figure loomed so close that it nearly filled the entire frame. A gentle smile graced the woman's features, her eyes seemingly peering directly into mine through the glossy print. A sense of familiarity washed over me, stirring ancient memories from the depths of my being. As I rose to retrieve an old photo album, I realized my hands trembled ever so slightly. Leafing through the yellowed pages, I stumbled upon a picture that unlocked the mystery, a young image of my grandmother, captured by the same Polaroid long ago. The mirrored smile in the photograph mirrored the one immortalized in the last snapshot. Arranging the photos in chronological order on the table, a silent narrative unfolded before me, a bridge spanning two realms, woven through the lens of a vintage camera. I refrained from revisiting the spectral encounter, allowing the Polaroid to reclaim its place on the shelf. To this day, on tranquil evenings suffused with the golden hues of sunset, I revisit those photographs. At times, the smile in the image seems to shift ever so slightly, as if my grandmother endeavors to impart a message. In those fleeting moments, the boundary between memory and reality blurs, akin to the fragile surface of a freshly developed Polaroid. Story 22, night had draped the ancient countryside home in a shroud of profound serenity. Nestled in my cherished armchair beside the crackling fireplace, I observed the shadows waltz across the walls as the flames leisurely devoured the logs. The cozy warmth enveloped me like a snug embrace, while outside, the autumn breeze tenderly brushed against the tree leaves. It was in that moment of utter tranquility that a peculiar sound caught my attention, a crystal-clear, childlike laughter drifting from the upper floor of the house, a laughter resembling silver bells. Pausing to listen, I allowed the sound to intertwine with the fireplace's crackling symphony. There was no hint of menace in it. Instead, it was a joyous laughter, almost melodic. Yet I had dwelled alone in this abode for over 2 decades, never playing host to children. Intrigue began to stir within me like a gentle stream, gradually dispelling the drowsiness that had nearly overtaken me. Rising from the armchair with deliberate movements, I savored the sensation as my feet met the worn Persian rug. The floorboards whispered softly beneath me as I made my way towards the staircase. The candlelight from the living room cast a warm and inviting glow, projecting my silhouette on the walls in a silent dance. Ascending the stairs, I noticed the air growing cooler with each step. It was not a harsh cold, but rather a caress on the skin, akin to the breeze by the ocean. The laughter echoed once more, nearer this time, emanating from the guest room. A room seldom frequented, adorned with antique furniture veiled in white sheets gently swaying, moved by an unseen breath. The door to the room stood slightly ajar, allowing a silvery light to filter through, unlike any other light in the house. Not moonlight, too warm for that, nor the glow of electric lamps. It was something else, pulsating gently like a serene heartbeat. Pushing the door open, the ancient wood crooned a familiar tune. The room unfolded before me, bathed in that peculiar luminescence. The draped furniture formed soft, comforting contours, resembling clouds in a clear sky. And there, perched on the windowsill, I beheld a sight that stole my breath, not a distinct figure, but a play of light and shadow morphing into a childlike form. The laughter rang out once more, clearly emanating from that radiant presence. No fear gripped me, only a profound sense of awe. The light child seemed to dance with the beams it emitted, painting luminous patterns on the walls as if crafting with light itself. Drawing closer, I felt the room's temperature sway between cool and warm, like the ebb and flow of ocean waves. As I approached, a familiar essence emanated from the figure. In its fluid movements, I recognized the gestures I once made as a child, playing alone in my room. The realization washed over me with the sweetness of a forgotten memory. That laughter, so pure and crystalline, was my own childhood laughter. Time seemed to stretch as I observed that surreal spectacle. The light child continued its silent play, occasionally punctuated by that melodic laughter, now echoing like a whisper from the past. I refrained from speaking or disrupting, afraid to shatter the tranquility and nostalgia of the moment. Gradually, the silvery light dimmed, akin to the sun setting on a winter's eve. The childlike figure faded into evanescence until all that lingered was a faint glow. The final laughter I heard was almost a murmur, a tender farewell before dissolving into darkness. I lingered in the room for what felt like an eternity, enveloped in a comforting silence. The veiled furniture had ceased its sway, and the air returned to its usual temperature. Yet something had shifted. The guest room, once a repository of dusty memories, now held a precious enigma. Retreating to my armchair by the fireplace where the flames smoldered softly, I nestled among the cushions, realizing I would never truly grasp what had unfolded that night. Was it a dream, a recollection? Or perchance something profound, a message from yesteryears manifesting through a child's laughter in the shadows? Since that night, whenever I passed by the guest room, I paused to listen. Sometimes, on the stillest of nights, I catch a faint echo of that crystalline laughter, akin to a soothing lullaby guiding me towards slumber. And with a smile, I allow the mystery to endure, a sweet secret shared between myself and the child who laughs in the dark. Story 23. The gentle breeze whispered through the night, carrying the scent of earth and blossoms that bloomed in the dark. Nestled in my beloved armchair, I tuned into the symphony of the ancient house's breath all around me. The wooden bones of the structure murmured softly, as if yearning to share tales of old. In the hush of that moment, a steady, pulsing beat reached my ears from the upper hallway. A rhythm akin to a door knocker swayed by the wind, yet oddly precise, almost entrancing. The soft glow of the reading lamp painted flickering shadows on the wallpaper, crafting figures that danced with a life of their own. Setting aside my book, I remained motionless, fixated on that persistent sound, not irksome, but rather possessing a melodic quality in its consistency. Rising languidly, my slippers sinking into the plush Persian rug, I drifted towards the stairs. Ascending the weathered steps, each one uttered a faint groan, as if the house itself echoed my curiosity. The beat persisted, unwavering in its tempo, beckoning me through the dimly illuminated corridor where moonbeams filtered through the tall windows. Upstairs, the air bore a chill, carrying a faint fragrance of aged wood and beeswax. Tracing the sound, I reached the weathered library door. Shut tight as always, yet the brass knocker continued its rhythmic dance against the sturdy wood. Not a breath of wind stirred. All hallway windows were shut tight. Mesmerized, I watched as the hefty knocker moved of its own accord, as if an unseen hand tapped with infinite patience. Moving closer, almost spellbound by the steady motion. The sound grew clearer, revealing a subtle shift in rhythm, as if following an enigmatic musical pattern. Extending my hand to the brass handle, the frosty metal met my touch, polished by generations of hands. The door, unlocked, resisted my push to open it. Unobstructed, yet it felt as though something on the other side gently held it shut. The knocker persisted in its dance, heedless of my presence, as if enacting an ancient ritual. Seating myself on the floor, leaning against the wall beside the door, I surrendered to the lullaby of that insistent beat. Time blurred as I lingered there, absorbing the tale woven by the sound. My eyelids drooped, thoughts drifting through misty visions of bygone libraries and forsaken tomes. The beat melded with my breath, with my pulse, merging into the natural cadence of the night. Awakening, dawn's pale light bathed the hallway. The knocker lay still, silent as though it had never stirred, rising slowly, limbs tingling from hours spent on the floor. This time, as I grasped the handle, the door yielded without opposition. The library stood as I had left it the day prior, each book in its place, dust untouched in the morning glow. Yet on the antique desk, bathed in the first sunbeam, lay an open book I had not placed there. Its pages pristine, as if anticipating a tale to be inscribed. The knocker has remained silent since that night, but on tranquil evenings, a faint echo of that rhythm occasionally whispers in the air, as if the house seeks to recall a forgotten melody. Story 24. In the depths of night, my study was enveloped in a tranquil hush, broken only by the resonant tolls of the grandfather clock announcing midnight. Each chime rippled through the stillness like echoes on a placid pond. Nestled in my weathered leather armchair, a tome lay open on my lap while the soft patter of rain danced upon the window panes. The old house murmured softly, its ancient timbers settling into the embrace of darkness. My gaze wandered to the hallway door, bathed in the warm glow of my reading lamp, its dark wooden frame standing out against the shadows. A subtle shift seemed to linger in the air tonight, a whisper of change that eluded my grasp. Perhaps it was the brass handle catching the light in an unfamiliar way, or the grain of the wood appearing subtly altered. Despite 15 years of residency, the door now felt like a stranger in my own home. With a sigh, I rose from my seat, marking my place in the book with a delicate silk ribbon. The floor felt cool beneath my slippered feet as I approached the door, a chill seeping into the air around me as if winter had crept into that solitary corner. My hand reached out to the handle, finding it strangely warm against the cold night. The door swung open effortlessly, revealing the unremarkable hallway beyond familiar wallpaper, worn carpet, and a row of aged photographs adorning the walls. Shaking my head at my own fanciful thoughts, I closed the door once more. Perhaps my mind was simply playing tricks on me, influenced by the mysteries I had been reading. That night, my dreams were filled with doors appearing in improbable places, each bearing a brass handle warm to the touch amidst their surreal surroundings. As morning light filtered through the windows, I went about my day as usual, giving only a passing glance to the hallway door. But as dusk settled in, a peculiar sight caught my eye. The door now bore a lighter hue, as if aged by decades overnight. The brass handle had acquired a patina previously unseen. Intrigued, I scrutinized the door with newfound curiosity. The wood seemed transformed, with a distinct grain I could not place. Even the hinges had shifted from iron black to a burnished copper. Night after night, the door underwent subtle metamorphoses, its appearance shifting between ages. The handle would move imperceptibly, the frame gaining or losing intricate carvings. Yet beyond the door, the hallway remained unchanged, the same wallpaper, carpet, and photographs lining the walls. Compelled by curiosity, I began chronicling these alterations in a journal, capturing each transformation with meticulous sketches and descriptions. The door never changed in my direct gaze. It was always during the deepest hours of night, when the house slumbered and my attention drifted elsewhere, that the shifts occurred. One evening, determined to unravel the mystery, I embarked on a vigil, observing the door through the night. Facing it directly in my armchair, a pot of tea by my side, I watched as the hands of the grandfather clock swept by. At 3:17 a.m., a flicker of the study lights heralded a momentary darkness, and in that fleeting instant, I felt a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. When the light returned, the door had transformed, once more warm oak replaced by rich mahogany, silver inlays dancing across its surface like ethereal whispers. Drawn to this new manifestation, I reached for the handle now crafted from crystal, but hesitated as a gentle vibration hummed in the air. And then the realization struck me: the door bore no keyhole, not in this iteration, nor in any previous form. Yet each morning a keyhole had greeted me below the handle. Or had it? The memory tugged at the edges of my mind, a detail overlooked or obscured. The following day I scoured my journal for any mention of the keyhole, finding none. Had I simply missed such a fundamental feature, or was there a deeper enigma at play? The question lingered, a puzzle demanding resolution. Now, as twilight descends each evening, I ponder the door and its enigmatic transformations. Sometimes I glimpse other hallways beyond its threshold, alternate realities with disparate decor and memories. But upon opening the door, it is always my hallway that awaits. I toyed with the idea of rearranging the photographs, of testing the reality before me. Yet an unspoken warning held me back, cautioning against delving too deeply into the unknown. The door continues to shift, a silent observer of its own changes. I have grown accustomed to its nightly intrigues, finding solace in the quiet evolution. Perhaps it is not the door that alters, but my perception of it, shifting with each viewing. Or perhaps both are true, or neither. One certainty remains as the grandfather clock tolls midnight and rain taps gently against the windows. I find myself eagerly anticipating the next transformation, the next chapter of this nocturnal enchantment. What secrets will the door unveil? What mysteries will it shroud in the silent hours before dawn? Story 25. The autumn breeze softly brushed against the tree leaves, creating a gentle rustling that harmonized with the hushed whispers of the surrounding crowd. Seated on my cherished bench in the park, I observed the steady stream of passers-by strolling along the paved pathways. The air held a crispness that carried the fragrance of damp soil and rain-kissed wood. Though I held a book in my hands, my focus was captured by a subtle, almost elusive sensation that had lingered with me for days. It all began discreetly. One morning on my way to work, a tingling sensation prickled at the nape of my neck as though unseen eyes were fixed upon me. I glanced around but saw only the usual flow of commuters rushing towards their destinations. In the days that followed, that feeling grew more frequent, more tangible. During lunch breaks, while running errands at the grocery store, even as I sat at my favorite cafe, people continued to drift by my bench, some solitary, others accompanied. A woman clad in a scarlet coat paused briefly to check her phone, while an elderly gentleman ambled leisurely with his polished cane. Yet amidst those familiar faces, I sensed a subtle shift, something indefinable. Closing my book, I rose from the bench, deciding to take a stroll. The sky transitioned into amber hues, with streetlights flickering to life one by one. I sauntered down the main avenue, listening to the rhythmic tap of my footsteps on the gravel. The sensation lingered, akin to an unseen shadow trailing me at a fixed distance. Pausing by a storefront window, I feigned interest in the displayed wares. In the glass's reflection, I discreetly observed the figures passing behind me. It was then that I noticed a peculiar occurrence, a face in the throng that appeared ever present, indistinct and elusive, weaving amidst the crowd with seamless fluidity. Resuming my walk, this time with heightened vigilance, I veered onto side streets, then another. The crowd thinned, yet the presence endured. Settling on a bench in a tranquil square, encircled by ancient edifices aglow with lamplight, the air grew chillier, and the evening sky unveiled its initial stars. It dawned on me unsettlingly that it wasn't a singular gaze trailing me, but many. It felt as though multiple individuals were exchanging glances, passing the baton in a silent, meticulously orchestrated ballet. Certain faces recurred more frequently: a young woman sporting a cobalt scarf, a bespectacled middle-aged man, a boy with a backpack. Standing up unhurriedly, I made my way home, the weight of those gazes pressing upon my back. The streets were nearly deserted now, yet the sensation failed to diminish. If anything, it intensified within the nocturnal silence. Upon reaching my apartment, I settled by the window, observing the street below. People continued to traverse, some pausing momentarily, others marching onward. I pondered how many were truly bound for a destination, and how many were entwined in that enigmatic choreography, with me unwittingly at its center. The disconcerting aspect was their utter normalcy, blending seamlessly with the populace. As the city lights flickered to life one by one, I contemplated the essence of this veiled surveillance. Who were these individuals? What were they seeking? And most crucially, why me? Queries suspended in the ambience as night draped the city in its inky shroud. Subsequently, I've acclimated to this newfound awareness. At times, I endeavor to discern my watchers, while at others, I feign ignorance. Yet they persist, akin to phantoms skirting the periphery of my everyday existence. Amidst the nocturnal stillness, as I gaze from my window at the dwindling streets, I muse on whether they, too, contemplate me from their abodes, gearing up for another day in this enigmatic waltz of gazes and silhouettes. Story 26, the hotel corridor was enveloped in a soft, amber glow filtering through glass lampshades the color of honey. It was deep into the night. The only sound breaking the silence was the gentle hum of air conditioners. I made my way towards the elevator, my suitcase gliding noiselessly over the rich burgundy carpet. The weariness from a long day of business meetings hung heavily on my shoulders. With a press of the elevator button, I stood there, gazing at my blurred reflection in the metallic doors. The digital numbers above the elevator displayed its gradual descent, 654. A subtle green light emanated from the display, casting a soothing hue on the walls. The doors slid open with a soft chime, inviting me into the compact space adorned with mirrors and dark wood. My destination was the 7th floor, the pinnacle. I pressed the button and leaned against the back wall, closing my eyes for a moment. The elevator began its ascent, moving smoothly and steadily. The mechanism's sound was barely audible, akin to a deep, rhythmic breath. When I reopened my eyes, a peculiar sight greeted me in the mirror's reflection. It appeared as though my image lagged behind my movements by a fraction of a second, a fleeting illusion. Dismissing it as a trick of fatigue, I shook my head. As the elevator came to a halt, the doors parted ways. Stepping into the hallway, a sense of unease crept in. The carpet beneath my feet had transformed from burgundy to a deep green, while the wall lamps took on an antique charm with an Art Deco flair I hadn't noticed before. Despite the display indicating the 7th floor, the ambience felt entirely different. The corridor stretched longer, narrower, and the air carried a distinct scent reminiscent of old books and aged wood. The room doors bore unconventional numbering, 7A, 7B, 7C, deviating from the conventional sequence. Turning to retrace my steps to the elevator, I found the doors had silently shut. Pressing the call button yielded no response. The display above the elevator was blank, as though the lift had never been there. The silence grew dense, almost palpable. Slowly, I ventured down the elongated hallway, attempting to reorient myself. The lights seemed to pulsate faintly, as if inhaling and exhaling. Each door I passed appeared identical, yet exuded a distinct aura, hinting at concealed narratives behind their dark wooden facade. At the far end of the corridor, I spotted a figure seated in an antique armchair. He bore the appearance of an elderly doorman in a vintage uniform, his snow-white hair impeccably groomed. Raising his gaze from the book he perused, he greeted me with a warm smile. "Are you lost?" He inquired in a soothing, familiar tone, as though anticipating my arrival. "I believe so," I responded. "I was bound for the 7th floor, but this place—" "Ah, this indeed is the 7th floor," he interjected with a cryptic grin. "Just not the one you sought. You see, this elevator possesses a peculiarity. It guides weary travelers to where they need to be, not necessarily where they intend to go." Surveying my surroundings anew, I discerned subtler details. The gilded frames adorning the walls held monochrome photographs of joyous individuals in period attire, while the clock displayed an inconceivable time, its hands moving counterclockwise. "Fret not," the doorman reassured, closing his book gently. "The elevator shall return when the moment is right. Meanwhile, why not take a seat? Time is of no essence here." Settling into the armchair beside him, a sense of fatigue dissipated gradually. The once disquieting silence now enveloped me like a warm embrace, comforting and serene. The doorman resumed his reading, and I found myself entranced by the shadows dancing on the walls, weaving mesmerizing patterns. Time seemed to blur, minutes melded into hours. The backward ticking of the clock crafted a tranquil melody, akin to a lullaby. At a certain juncture, the familiar chime of the elevator resonated. "There you go," the doorman remarked without lifting his gaze from his book. "I reckon it is time you return to your designated floor." Rising to my feet, a peculiar sense of rejuvenation washed over me. Approaching the elevator, I intended to express gratitude to the doorman, yet the armchair sat empty. His book lay atop the armrest, its weathered leather cover faintly aglow in the gentle illumination. The elevator doors slid open soundlessly. Stepping inside, this journey proved markedly brief. Upon disembarking, I found myself back in the familiar corridor with the burgundy carpet and contemporary lamps. Reaching my room, I inserted the key into the lock. Before entering, I cast a final glance towards the elevator. For a fleeting moment, the digital display flickered, revealing not a number but an unfamiliar symbol. Just as swiftly, it reverted to its regular state, displaying a simple 7. Since that fateful night, each elevator ride in a hotel prompts contemplation. Will it transport me to my intended destination or to where I truly belong? And on the stillest of nights, a faint rustle of pages echoes in the abyss between floors, turned by invisible hands from a bygone tome. Story 27. In the heart of a rainy night, the heavy drops drummed a hypnotic melody on the roof of my old country house, setting the stage for another solitary evening. Serpentine patterns traced by raindrops on the window panes danced in the flickering candlelight, while the gentle wind orchestrated a soothing symphony through the garden trees, rustling the leaves in a natural lullaby. Nestled in my favorite armchair, cradling a steaming cup of tea, I watched as wisps of vapor spiraled into the air, lost in the tranquility of the moment. The familiar sounds of the house enveloped me, the soft creaking of aging wood, the rhythmic ticking of the pendulum clock in the entryway, and the faint whistle of wind weaving through unseen crevices. Amid this comforting ambience, a subtle yet palpable unease crept into the tranquil night. It was during a sip of my tea that a peculiar sight caught my eye. The upstairs bedroom window, visible through the hallway mirror's reflection, glowed with an eerie luminescence as though a phantom candle flickered within. Yet I knew well that no light source resided in that room. Setting down my cup with deliberation, I rose from the armchair and embarked on a silent journey towards the mysterious glow. Each creak of the wooden stairs seemed to carry a hidden message, as if the house itself sought to communicate with me through the language of subtle sounds. The air grew chilly as I ascended, a delicate layer of moisture clinging to the walls of the upper hallway. Upon reaching the bedroom door, I paused, hesitating before the cold brass handle. With a hesitant push, the door swung open, revealing the room shrouded in shadows. The window, the very one that had captivated me in the mirror's reflection, remained tightly shut. Yet to my astonishment, the lock began to shift of its own accord, the window pane inching open without a visible force guiding it. As the cool evening breeze wafted into the room, carrying with it a scent of bygone eras, dried flowers, and ancient wood, I approached the window with cautious curiosity. Raindrops pirouetted into the room, forming intricate patterns on the windowsill, defying gravity in a mesmerizing dance. Amid this inexplicable spectacle, my gaze was drawn to the glass where ghostly letters materialized, as though an unseen hand inscribed a cryptic message on the foggy surface. Straining to decipher the blurred words, my heart quickened its rhythm, matching the ethereal rhythm of the billowing curtains that swayed in a phantom draft. The moonlight filtered through the rain-laden clouds, cast shifting shadows on the walls, each shadow a silent narrator of untold tales. With a trembling hand, I reached towards the window, feeling the chill of the outside world brushing against my fingertips. Yet, as I neared the glass, the window closed with a whisper, sealing off the mysterious scent that had pervaded the room. In the hush that followed, with rain still pattering outside, I stood rooted to the spot, absorbing the lingering magic of the moment. The room had reverted to its ordinary state, yet an invisible thread had been woven between me and the unseen forces at play. Since that enigmatic night, whenever rain descends in a gentle cascade, I find myself ensconced in the armchair, eyes fixed on the hallway mirror's reflection of the window. Sometimes it remains motionless, a silent sentinel, while on other nights it unfolds in a slow, silent ritual that has woven itself into the fabric of my existence. The source of this spectral phenomenon remains a mystery, a secret shared solely between me and the ancient walls that cradle me. And on the stillest of nights, when the wind whispers through the trees and rain taps a tranquil rhythm, I sense a spectral presence, a guardian unseen yet deeply felt, a companion in the shadows that manifests through a window that opens of its own accord, a silent guardian of the night. Story 28. The autumn breeze whispered gently through the rustling leaves as I meandered down the rural road, the colors of the setting sun casting a magical glow upon the sky in hues of amber and violet. The GPS had long given up its guidance, but I felt no sense of urgency. This familiar terrain held a certain comfort, or so I believed. The dirt path wound its way gracefully amidst hills adorned with barren vineyards, a sanctuary of tranquility. A crack in the window welcomed the crisp air, carrying with it the earthy aroma of moist soil and fallen foliage. In these fleeting moments, time itself seemed to slow, inviting me to relish each passing second. A turn to the right beckoned me, guided by a weathered wooden sign bearing the weight of years gone by. It was then that I noticed a peculiar anomaly. This road was absent from my mental map of the area. Pausing briefly, I tried to reorient myself as elongating shadows painted mysterious shapes amidst the trees lining the path. The road beneath my wheels was impeccably smooth, too pristine for a forgotten byway. Not a single pothole or crack marred its surface, as if it had been meticulously preserved for an unseen purpose. Leaves drifted lazily through the air, as if time itself had chosen to linger in this sacred space. Continuing at a leisurely pace, I found myself captivated by the evolving landscape. The trees flanking the road appeared ancient, their twisted branches telling tales of forgotten eras. Their canopies intertwined above, forming a natural canopy through which the fading light of dusk filtered. In the distance, faint lights danced like out-of-season fireflies, gracefully weaving between the tree trunks, appearing and vanishing like fleeting memories. The silence enveloped me, broken only by the gentle hum of the engine and the whisper of leaves stirred by the wind. As I pressed forward, the road underwent a subtle transformation, the edges blurred as if painted by an unseen hand. Shadows deepened, yet not in a menacing manner. Reality itself seemed to soften, its sharp edges melting away. Abruptly, a sight caught my eye. An ancient brass mailbox stood by the roadside, its gleaming surface defying the passage of time. Adorned with an intricate compass rose, it bore no name or number. Upon reaching out to touch it, a faint warmth seemed to radiate from the metal, a stark contrast to the cool evening air. The road continued its gentle curve, revealing increasingly intriguing details. Small stones along the edge emitted a soft glow, as though illuminated from within, defying the logic of the natural world. The sky above me took on an indescribable hue, a shade existing solely in this forgotten realm. Stars began to emerge, their presence altered, as if gazing upon a firmament from a distant time or realm. After what felt like an eternity, or perhaps a mere moment, I ascended what appeared to be the crest of a hill. The road opened up to a circular clearing, paved with ancient stones, where an old wrought iron lamppost stood, casting a warm and inviting glow. Stepping out of the car, I was met with an eerie stillness, as if time itself held its breath. From this vantage point, the distant city lights seemed foreign, belonging to a reality separated by an invisible barrier. Surveying the scene, I noticed a profound change in the road I had traversed. No longer was it the modern asphalt I had driven upon moments ago, but a path paved with ancient stones, worn by the footsteps of countless travelers. Yet my memory insisted on a different reality. Retrieving the road map from the glove compartment, I scrutinized it under the lamppost's illumination. As suspected, this mysterious road remained absent from the map, as if it existed solely in the realm of dreams. A sudden gust of wind caused the map to quiver in my hands, and for a fleeting moment, golden lines seemed to materialize upon the paper, tracing a path that glimmered before fading into obscurity. Blinking in disbelief, the vision vanished. Lingering in this surreal oasis, I absorbed the profound sense of peace that enveloped me. When the time came to depart, I noticed the lamppost had extinguished its light, shrouding the path ahead in darkness. Yet an unspoken assurance guided me homeward. As I drove towards the distant city, I stole glances in the rearview mirror, witnessing the lamppost reignite, its glow diminishing as I ventured further away. The final glimpse revealed a golden luminescence dancing in the air, as though stardust had been scattered upon a road uncharted on any map. In the days that followed, I embarked on numerous quests to rediscover that enigmatic road. I roamed the countryside for hours, exploring every fork and trail, yet the path with its solitary lamppost and luminous stones remained elusive, vanishing like a wisp of a dream upon waking. The only remnant of my journey was a faint golden trace upon my weathered map, visible only when illuminated by a certain light, a secret waiting to be unfurled. Story 29, the doorbell remained silent on that autumn afternoon. A gentle knock echoed through the stillness, like a whispered secret brushing against the door. I was nestled on the couch, engulfed in a cozy blanket, engrossed in a book while the rain serenaded the window with its soothing rhythm. Rising slowly, I attributed the sound to the wind's playful touch outside. Upon opening the door, an empty space greeted me, save for a square brown package resting at the threshold. It sat there pristine and mysterious, devoid of any labels or markings, except for my name inscribed in a script of ancient elegance. The cardboard felt smooth and dry, defying the rain's persistent patter outside. Curiously light, I brought it inside, the quiet now amplified by the ticking of the grandfather clock and the rain's soft lullaby. Settling back on the couch, I scrutinized the package, its perfection a testament to skilled craftsmanship. A faint aroma wafted from within, a blend of aged books, black tea, and a hint of sandalwood, familiar yet elusive. As I cradled it, a subtle movement stirred inside, ethereal and intangible, like a hidden dance of the unseen. Twilight descended, casting elongated shadows across the room. Opting for the natural dimness, I refrained from switching on the lights, allowing the fading daylight to envelop me in its gentle embrace. The package seemed to absorb the waning light, its surface playing with reflections in a mesmerizing display. After a contemplative pause, I sought a way to unveil its secrets. Running my fingers along the edges, I detected sporadic warmth, as if the cardboard held a mysterious inner fire, pulsating in enigmatic patterns. A vague memory surfaced, a fleeting recollection of a similar package from my past, evoking a sense of nostalgia and intrigue. The rain intensified, its pitter-patter harmonizing with the warmth, tracing patterns on the window pane, mirroring the enigmatic heat of the package. Lost in contemplation, the room's temperature shifted imperceptibly, settling into a tranquil equilibrium. The scent within the box mingled with the rain's fragrance, saturating the air with a blend of past and present. A magical discovery awaited as my touch left faint luminous imprints on the cardboard, shimmering briefly before fading into the night. Mesmerized by this enchanting phenomenon, I lost track of time, only to realize night had descended in a cloak of ethereal blue. The package emitted a subtle glow, barely perceptible in the dimness, beckoning with its silent allure. Opting to postpone its unveiling, I placed it on the coffee table, the room bathed in the warm glow of a solitary lamp. In the days that followed, the package remained a silent enigma, a beacon of mystery amidst the mundane. The faint glow persisted, the subtle movements within captivating my imagination, a dance of secrets waiting to be unveiled. The elusive scent shifted with the passing hours, an ever-changing melody of familiarity and intrigue. The origin of the package remained shrouded in mystery, its true contents a tantalizing puzzle. Perhaps the allure lay not in its unveiling, but in the contemplation of the unknown, a silent invitation to embrace the mysteries of life. Even now, as autumn rain whispers against the window, I find myself drawn to that package, its presence a reminder of the beauty found in unanswered questions. And I ponder as the rain dances outside, if elsewhere another soul gazes upon a similar package, their name written in elegant script, pondering whether to unravel its mysteries or let the enigma linger, a silent dance of curiosity and wonder. Story 30. The rain's gentle symphony on the roof of the ancestral home lulled me into a trance as I sifted through the final remnants of my grandmother's legacy. Nostalgia hung heavy in the air, mingling with the fragrance of aged wood and swirling dust particles basking in the waning sunlight filtering through the cream drapes. Each item I unearthed seemed to whisper tales of yesteryears, painting vivid memories in my mind's eye. And then, amidst the remnants, I stumbled upon a weathered photo album cloaked in dark leather. Its edges bore the marks of time, yet its touch retained a softness only years could bestow. I tenderly placed it on the weathered oak table in the living room, the scent of mold and aged paper wafting from its pages. Page after page unfolded a monochrome tapestry of family moments, weddings, birthdays, lazy summer days. I found solace in recognizing my aging relatives in their youthful glory, tracing resemblances through the generations. The rustle of the pages harmonized with the rain's gentle percussion on the window panes, but it was a specific photograph captured in the garden during a sun-soaked luncheon that seized my attention. There sat my grandmother, radiant in her floral gown, surrounded by kin. Yet a solitary figure stood at a distance, eluding recognition. Clad in a pale dress that grazed her ankles, her face veiled by the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat, she remained a mystery. As I scrutinized the image, a chill breeze swept through the room, coaxing the curtains to dance. Dusk descended, casting a shroud of uncertainty over the scene. I illuminated the room with an aged table lamp, casting a warm, inviting glow. The photograph revealed a disquieting anomaly. The mysterious figure's shadow defied logic, diverging from the others as if bathed in an alternate light source. A shiver traversed my spine, sparking a memory of a clandestine conversation overheard between my mother and aunt long ago, speaking of a woman who had fleetingly graced the family's circle before vanishing without a trace. The rain's cadence crescendoed, weaving an enchanting web around me. The figure in the photograph seemed to sharpen, beckoning me with an unspoken tale. In a corner, barely discernible faint markings etched a cryptic message: "She always sees." Though reluctant, I nestled the photograph back into its place, unable to entirely seal the album. A relentless urge impelled me to delve deeper, to unearth the concealed narratives this house harbored. How many untold mysteries lay veiled within these walls? How many secrets had the lens captured, enshrined in the hush of time? Night enfolded the house in its tranquil embrace, the rain's lullaby a soothing balm. Nestled in an armchair by the window, the album resting on my lap, I pondered. Who was she, this enigmatic woman? What secrets had she witnessed, and did her gaze linger still? With a heavy heart, I left the album agape on the table, the mysterious photograph exposed. As I readied for slumber, a final glance revealed a subtle shift in the figure's posture, as though she had turned to meet my gaze. Was it a trick of the light, a figment of my imagination, or a profound mystery destined to endure, veiled within the aged pages of a family heirloom? Story 31. The winter twilight cast a gentle purple glow upon the walls of my bedroom, as the pitter-patter of raindrops against the windows created a soothing lullaby. The flickering candlelight on my grandmother's old vanity mirror conjured dancing shadows that swirled and twirled in a mesmerizing ballet. The fragrance of burning firewood intertwined with the sweet aroma of wax, enveloping the room in a warm and inviting embrace. Amidst this tranquil scene, a peculiar occurrence caught my attention. While tending to my hair in front of the mirror, a fleeting glimpse of a tall, slender figure seemed to glide behind me, an ethereal presence that vanished when I turned to look. Doubt crept into my mind, dismissing it as a mere trick of light and shadow. In the days that followed, I found myself drawn to the reflections surrounding me. Whether it was the gleaming wooden table, the evening-tinted window panes, or even the tiny rearview mirror in my car, each surface held a fleeting image of that mysterious figure. It was as though a hidden world of reflections existed, where this enigmatic being observed me with a quiet curiosity. The figure, lacking distinct features, exuded a soft, silvery luminescence, its form elusive yet captivating. At times, a gentle smile seemed to grace its face, while other moments hinted at subtle gestures, as if reaching out across the mirror's divide. Rather than fear, a sense of familiarity washed over me, as if this presence had always lingered on the periphery of my awareness. One serene evening, as I sat absorbed in a book, the figure in the window's reflection appeared more vivid than ever before. Instead of fading when confronted, it lingered, a silent invitation hanging in the air. A faint rustle, like silk caught in a breeze, stirred the stillness, prompting me to rise and approach the window. Mirroring my movements with graceful fluidity, the figure extended a hand towards me, a wordless gesture that beckoned me closer. In that suspended moment, a profound realization dawned upon me. Whenever the figure materialized, a profound tranquility descended upon the room. Sounds softened, colors muted, time itself slowing to a gentle crawl. It was as though a realm of peace accompanied this mysterious visitor, blurring the line between reality and reverie. Seeking out reflections became a ritual, not out of trepidation or intrigue, but to bask in the serenity that the figure brought forth. Its presence appeared most frequently in moments of calm, when worries and distractions faded into the background, as if attuned to the rhythm of my innermost thoughts. With the passing of days, the figure became a silent companion, a beacon of solace in the ebb and flow of everyday life. Unfettered by the need for answers, I embraced the enigma, recognizing that some mysteries hold a beauty that transcends explanation. Even now, as the sun dips below the horizon and shadows waltz across the room, I pause to observe the reflections that dance before me. In those hushed moments when the world holds its breath, the luminous figure emerges once more, a silent guardian of peace and a gentle reminder that some secrets are meant to be cherished, not unraveled. Story 32. The night had enveloped the old house in a velvety hush, broken only by the soft patter of autumn rain on the window panes. Nestled in my cherished armchair, cradling a warm cup of tea, my gaze wandered absently to the painting adorning the wall across from me. A relic passed down from my grandmother, it depicted a tranquil woodland scene at dusk. While not a valuable piece, its allure lay in its ability to stir a poignant sense of calm. As the golden glow from the floor lamp cast flickering shadows around the room, a peculiar sight caught my eye. The painting appeared askew, a subtle tilt to the right, though I could have sworn it had always hung straight. Setting down my cup on the nearby table, I rose, the floorboards murmuring beneath my feet as I drew near. With gentle hands, I adjusted the painting, feeling the rough contours of the aged frame beneath my fingertips. Returning to my seat, I resumed my book, lulled by the tea's warmth and the soothing cadence of the rain. Moments later, a glance upward revealed the painting now tilted to the left, a disconcerting shift from its prior position. A shiver danced down my spine as I grappled with the notion that fatigue or mere trickery of light could explain this anomaly. Rising once more, this time with caution, I approached the painting and discerned a newfound peculiarity. The sunset hues appeared more vibrant, pulsing with life, while the tree shadows lengthened in a subtle, eerie dance. Trembling, I reached out to trace the canvas's surface, finding it warm to the touch, as though imbued with the room's own heat, yet the paint seemed to shimmer in an unfamiliar way. In the days that followed, I found myself drawn to the painting, each visit unveiling a subtle alteration in its stance. Sometimes the change was barely perceptible, other times it was starkly evident. Not only did its tilt vary, but the very essence of the painting seemed to shift before my eyes. The density of the trees fluctuated, the sky's clouds morphed in shape. Capturing photographs at dawn and dusk, I meticulously compared the images, revealing undeniable discrepancies. Within the painted forest, hidden details emerged and vanished. A bird's nest nestled among branches, a hidden glade, a phantom path materializing out of thin air. The sunset itself seemed to transition imperceptibly, as if time within the painting flowed to a rhythm distinct from our own. On a particularly serene evening, seated in my familiar armchair, movement flickered in my peripheral vision. The painting, of its own accord, began to tilt with a slow, almost imperceptible grace. Curiosity and a surreal tranquility overtook any fear as I observed this fluid motion, as though an unseen hand lovingly caressed the canvas. Approaching the painting anew, I felt a subtle vibration beneath my gaze. Reflected in the protective glass, a fleeting image materialized, a ghostly figure, resembling my grandmother, her features blurred and ephemeral, a wistful smile playing about her lips as she righted the painting. Since that moment, I've embraced these subtle shifts as a part of the house's enigmatic charm. Each night before retiring to bed, I spend a few moments studying the painting, endeavoring to unlock its newfound secrets. Perhaps it is my grandmother's way of signaling her enduring presence, a silent guardian through this mystical canvas that breathes and moves like a sentient entity. I've kept this tale close to my heart, sharing it with none, cherishing the sweet enigma within. The painting continues its dance, though less frequently now, as if having found a delicate equilibrium between revealing itself and preserving its mystery. And so I sit in my armchair each evening, tea in hand, lulled by the rain's gentle rhythm, entranced by the painting that lives a life of its own, engaging in a silent discourse only we two can decipher. Story 33. The rain whispered against the windows of the cozy establishment, harmonizing with the gentle clinks of cups and the murmurs of the few lingering patrons. Seated at the bar, I observed the play of dim lights pirouetting on the polished surface of the mahogany counter. Jack, the bartender, polished glasses with a deliberate rhythm, his movements almost hypnotic in their precision. That night, a veiled intensity lingered in his gaze, a nuance I had never before detected in my regular visits. His deep eyes held a mystery, even as he prepared my customary lavender tea. Though his hands moved with customary exactitude, a subtle tremor betrayed a hidden turmoil as he placed the steaming cup before me. The fragrance of lavender waltzed in the air, intertwining with the scent of coffee and the ancient wood that exuded its own nostalgic aroma. Jack's gaze flickered towards a secluded table in the farthest corner of the bar, where a solitary figure sat motionless, blending into the shadows like a specter of the night. With measured steps, Jack refilled my cup, his voice carrying a faint tension as he inquired if I desired anything else. In that moment, a disquieting detail caught my eye. A faint reddish stain adorned the cuff of his otherwise pristine white shirt, barely visible in the dim ambience. Time trickled slowly, the rain outside maintaining its rhythmic lullaby. Patrons departed one by one, leaving behind vacant seats and abandoned mugs. Solemnly, the enigmatic figure in the corner remained rooted, a silent sentinel awaiting an unknown arrival. As the night unfurled, Jack meticulously tended to the bar, his meticulous actions betraying a mounting unease. The pendulum clock echoed the passage of time, each tick a reminder of moments slipping away. Amidst the choreographed dance of bottles and wipes, a faded notebook caught my attention, nestled beneath the counter. Its weathered pages revealed meticulous script, chronicling names, dates, and places in meticulous detail. Yet it was the cryptic annotations on the final pages that captivated me, numbers devoid of apparent meaning, accompanied by intricate symbols etched with painstaking care. A shuffle of footsteps drew my gaze upwards. The mysterious figure had stirred from their secluded haven, making their way towards the exit. As they crossed paths with Jack at the bar, a silent exchange crackled with unspoken tension. An imperceptible nod passed between them before the stranger vanished into the obsidian night. Jack resumed his duties, but a subtle shift had settled in his demeanor. His hands, once unwavering, now trembled imperceptibly as he stowed away the glassware. Lost in contemplation, his eyes reflected a distant realm, wrestling with memories either cherished or forsaken. Preparing to depart, I felt a gentle touch on my arm, halting my retreat. Jack's voice, a whisper shrouded in calmness, enveloped me. There are tales a bartender bears witness to, stories that should remain veiled within these walls of silence, yet there are burdens too weighty to carry alone. Pausing, he measured his words with care, the flickering lamplight casting fleeting shadows upon his weary countenance. The notebook, a silent sentinel amidst the spirits, beckoned from its concealed alcove, guardian of enigmatic truths. A feeble smile graced Jack's lips, failing to reach his eyes. Return tomorrow, his words lingered in the hush. Perhaps a story will be spun, or perhaps not. Stepping into the night's embrace, the rain persisted in its gentle descent. Through the bar's window, I glimpsed Jack resuming his meticulous routine, a century of secrets hidden within the tapestries of daily gestures. Yet the knowledge that a deeper mystery cloaked his actions lingered, an enigma destined to elude complete comprehension. The lights of the establishment dimmed as I ventured into the obsidian night, the rain a steadfast companion in its soothing cadence. Beyond the veil of darkness, I pondered the myriad untold narratives concealed beneath bar counters, the silent sentinels akin to Jack, guardians of truths too profound to unveil. However, the answers eluded me, lost amidst the gentle symphony of rain cascading in the starless expanse of the nocturnal realm. Story 34, The Whispers of Night. Silence draped the winding streets of the quaint hillside town like a velvety shroud, embracing every corner with a soothing hush. It was an autumn evening painted with the scent of crackling wood and earthy leaves, as tendrils of fog slithered through the narrow alleyways like stealthy phantoms. Perched in my secluded third-floor apartment, I gazed out at the neighboring houses, their windows aglow with a soft, amber hue. The late hour should have been cloaked in stillness, yet the warm lights flickered without a sign of life behind the misty panes. The distant church bell chimed 10 times, its usual resonance hollowed out, as if veiled in a cloak of cotton. Though I had only recently arrived in this enigmatic town, The emptiness that now enveloped the streets was foreign to me. Normally, even at this late hour, a solitary figure would wander with their faithful canine companion, or the laughter of young revelers from the local tavern would linger under the flickering street lamp. Nestled in my favorite armchair, cradling a cup of chamomile tea between my palms, I observed the absence of the usual stray cat that prowled Mrs. Miller's windowsill. The steam spiraling from the cup pirouetted through the air, crafting fleeting shapes that gracefully dissolved into the room's obscurity. Opting for a soft, ambient glow from a modest reading lamp, the shadows it cast danced elegantly upon the cream-colored walls. A sudden rustle stirred from the hallway, a gentle whisper cutting through the tranquil air. Intrigued rather than alarmed, I rose from the armchair, setting the cup down upon the wooden side table with care. The hallway beckoned, the air now chillier, reminiscent not of winter's bite, but of the cool embrace within ancient stone walls. The familiar creak of the hardwood floor beneath my steps offered a peculiar comfort as I ventured closer. Pausing at the threshold of the bedroom, I hesitated. The door stood slightly ajar, a soft, bluish light seeping through the crack, an unfamiliar glow in my otherwise familiar abode. Pushing the door open with a muted creak, I found the window shut tight, yet the curtains swayed as if teased by an unseen breath. At my feet, a single sheet of paper lay, bathed in the ethereal light. Stooping to retrieve it, I recognized it as a weathered newspaper page bearing the date October 15, 1954, its headline arresting my gaze, "The Enigmatic Night of Pine Grove." The article recounted a night veiled in silence, where the town's denizens retreated into their homes as if compelled by an unspoken pact lost to time. Engrossed in the narrative, a movement beyond the window snagged my attention. Across the street, the lights dimmed one by one, like candles extinguished by an unseen hand. Yet within the darkened windows, motionless figures stood sentinel, their gazes fixed upon the deserted street. A buzz from my robe's pocket drew my focus, a message from the building's WhatsApp group. "Tonight, remain indoors, it is imperative." Peering out once more, I observed that all lights had now faded, save for mine. In the deepening silence, my heartbeat slowed, harmonizing with a primal rhythm, ancient and enigmatic. Perching on the edge of the bed, newspaper in hand, I pondered the enigmatic events of that bygone night. The paper felt worn, as though passed through countless hands, carrying whispers of forgotten tales. Beyond the window, the fog thickened, ensconcing the streetlights in a ghostly embrace. From my vantage point, the town's main thoroughfare lay deserted, a haunting echo of the past. Recalling the article's accounts of collective amnesia following the mysterious night, I rose and made my way to the light switch. Before plunging the room into darkness, I stole a final glance outside. The fog, now swirling in sinuous patterns, seemed to conceal ethereal figures in its milky depths, like phantoms adrift in a spectral sea. With the room dimmed, I settled upon the bed, still clothed, as the silence swelled around me, punctuated only by the steady cadence of the bedside clock. Drifting into slumber, I pondered whether the morning would unveil memories of this eerie night, or if, like the town's residents of yore, I would awaken oblivious to the cyclical mystery woven into our lives. As midnight's bells tolled in the distance, their chime muted and distant, I succumbed to sleep, the realm of dreams beckoning with whispers of a time where silence reigned as the universal tongue of enigmatic dwellers. Story 35. In the deep hush of the night, a distant, ethereal melody stirred the air. Nestled in my beloved armchair, a woolen blanket draped over my knees and a forgotten cup of chamomile tea by my side, I glanced up from the book in my hands. The delicate notes drifted like whispers of snow, barely there yet undeniably real. It was a piano, I could tell, playing a tune that felt on the edge of recognition, like an echo of a dream long faded. The house lay shrouded in shadows, with only a small lamp beside me casting a circle of gentle light. Shadows waltzed across the walls, moving in sync with the mysterious music. With a soft rustle, I stood up, letting the blanket fall to the floor. Each step on the creaking wooden floorboards led me closer to the living room window. Outside, the night lay serene and still, the full moon bathing the garden in its silver glow, revealing the graceful dance of trees swaying in the breeze. The neighboring houses slumbered in darkness, devoid of any signs of life, yet the haunting melody persisted, seeming to emanate from all directions and none at once. Room by room, I wandered through the house, chasing the elusive music that seemed to shift and change with each step. In the kitchen, it whispered from the living room. In the living room, it beckoned from the stairs. On the stairs, it descended from the upper floor. It was a mesmerizing game of echoes and whispers, guiding me on a silent journey through the familiar spaces of my home. Ascending to my bedroom, I noticed the door slightly ajar, a detail I was certain I hadn't left that way in the morning. Moonbeams filtered through the sheer curtains, casting intricate patterns on the floor. The melody grew clearer, more distinct, drawing me closer to its source. Pausing at the threshold, I surveyed the room with care. There on the bedside table, my old music box, a relic from my grandmother, glistened in the dim light. I had never dared to open it, convinced it lay broken. Yet now, in the stillness of the night, its tiny ballerina twirled gracefully, her shadow dancing on the wall. The music it played mirrored the enchanting tune that had lured me there, but amplified, as if the entire house had become a vessel of sound. Approaching tentatively, my heart beating in time with the melody, I noticed a warmth emanating from the music box's surface. The ballerina continued her dance, her porcelain face now bearing the striking resemblance of my grandmother, her sweet smile a mirror of my childhood memories. Our eyes met fleetingly, and in that instant the melody shifted, morphing into the lullaby she had sung to me in days gone by. I stood transfixed, enveloped in the music's embrace, feeling only peace and longing for days past. The notes filled the room, gradually ebbing away like the tide receding from the shore. As the music faded into silence, the music box closed with a soft click. The house once again embraced a profound stillness, pregnant with significance. Descending back to my armchair, I retrieved the fallen blanket, wrapping myself in its comforting embrace. The open book lay before me, its words a distant murmur in my mind. My thoughts lingered on the music box and my grandmother, pondering the untold melodies imprisoned within its silent mechanism, waiting for the right moment to be set free. Since that fateful night, on quiet evenings under the watchful gaze of the full moon, a familiar, tender melody fills the rooms. I no longer seek its origin. Instead, I close my eyes and listen, understanding that some mysteries need not be unraveled to be cherished.